Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Geo. I will be conducting you this evening, Beyond the Veil. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-conductress, Mrs. Geo.
Good evening, everyone.
And we have a really laid-back show for you this evening. It's just going to be us, and we will be taking all of your questions. We're going to be directing the broadcast in the place that you want to take it. So if you want to go to youtube.com/beyondtheveil, you'll find a little chat box over on YouTube. Now, here's a stipulation. You have to like and subscribe to the channel in order to ask questions. You have to do that. That's a secret password. Otherwise, the Tyler AI that we talked about yesterday will not allow you entrance into the chat room. So make sure that you've liked it and subscribed to the channel. And if you're on Facebook, make sure that you have shared the post too. Otherwise, we just simply cannot see your comments. So if you want to leave any comments, questions, anything like that, please do. I actually put together a little Beyond the Veil quickie earlier this morning, and it was about the 9 circles of consciousness and the journey and progression that I've gone through in my Ayahuasca Awakening. And many people have asked, hey, Chris, how do I escape the matrix? So I put this together to kind of just show one path of the Ayahuasca Awakening. And now that we're actually going to cover it on the show instead of putting it out there, we can get into much more depth. Then I might release the other video too. I don't know. I kind of like it because it's really quick, but I like this format as well because we can get in depth. So in the first hour, I want to cover that. Second and third hour, it's all up to you guys and gals out there. So
it's going to be directed by you guys.
Yeah, we've got some awesome comments that we're going to go over. One of the comments is, how do I deal with NPC family members? And we get this comment more often than not. So I do want to touch upon that sometime during the show because it's important that you create balance. It's all about balance. And you don't want to just completely disconnect from your family because that just goes against everything. But it's a last resort. Sometimes it's necessary. Like we both had to do that to a certain point, but then it came to a point of balance. So once we hit that point of balance and everything became much more healthier for everybody involved. And I think we fail to realize this when we stay in these parasitic relationships
or toxic
relationships, yeah, and energy vampirism and so on and so forth. We everything we see here on Beyond the Veil is from experience,
right?
So we would never say something unless we put a caveat out there that we're saying it from this perspective. But we would never say something from a lack of experience or from speculation unless we specifically state it's from speculation,
right?
So what works for us may not necessarily work for you, but it has worked for us as well, though. So I do want to get into that. How is Mrs. Geo doing tonight?
I'm wondering, like electric crystals, is there pizza outside this matrix? I wonder that too, because I really like pizza.
Do you?
And I would really miss pizza if I went to a universe where pizza didn't exist.
You can order a pizza if you'd like. And as long as you go downstairs and get it.
Ah.
See, okay, this is what Mrs. Geo did earlier. She cooked this really nice salmon. Beautiful salmon. Best salmon that I've ever had.
Aww.
And the middle of it didn't cook. So she only gave me the outside portions of it with the rice, and I ate it. And I said, aren't you going to eat? She says, no, my part isn't cooked well enough. And I said, well, you have to take it first. That's just the way that I am.
Well, that's the way I am,
she
too.
fed me and didn't feed herself. So we may be getting some pizza delivered in the middle of the show. Anyways, we will be right back right here on Beyond the Veil. Many people ask, Chris, how can I support Beyond the Veil? Well, first and foremost, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The more engagements a video gets, the more likely it is for YouTube's AI to recommend it to others with similar interests. Same goes with Facebook too. You can also find us on iHeartRadio.com. Just search for Beyond the Veil. We have a dedicated streaming channel where we play the best of BTV 24 hours a day. You can also send us questions, comments, and guest suggestions to info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. Finally, the most support you can give is by sending positive and loving energy to all of us here at Beyond the Veil and all of the Beyond the Veil viewers. Together, we are building a field of energy to rival the artificial intelligence control of this matrix. Take a moment to meditate on yourself, others around you, and tap into this amazing energy field. Now, let's get back to the show.
My dear traveler, the purpose of raw consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together. And that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now rise. Follow your conductors. And fear no danger. As you step beyond the veil.
All right. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the amazing team that we have out there. Nick Zervos, of course, who made all the graphics here.
Love you, Nick.
Freaking badass. And he also redid all of our thumbnails, too. So our graphics game is just top notch. Lucky, who has been monitoring the streams almost on every show, notifying us of any tech problems or anything like that. And for the first time, Lucky has given me the thumbs up that everything is good to go all across the board. So I'm very, very thrilled about that. And
All
Lucky,
3 venues
when
are
you tell
smooth.
me that, I love you that much more.
Yes.
So thank you for that. And many, many more here at Beyond the Veil. And we missed Alyssa yesterday in the chat. She said she was listening, but she wasn't in the chat. And she missed all of
we
the...
missed you.
Yeah, we were actually talking about you in the chat. So you should have been there because we could have been saying something about you that you may not have liked. Probably not, though.
Or that you really liked.
Or that you really liked, one or the other. But anyways, so there's an interesting comment that just came out. I want to get into the 9 circles of consciousness and the Ayahuasca Awakening here in just a moment. But somebody posted this really interesting comment in the chat earlier. I'm trying to find it here. Platonic forms. If Chris is a walk-in, then maybe the unhappy presence in the basement is Chris's original soul that wants back into its old body. Now, I know that you were joking with this, but it really raises a whole new level of perspective
I
here.
resonate with that for some reason.
I do too. Okay, so like I've had the same spirit that's kind of followed me around my entire life, and I talked about this with Brent Thomas that I seem to contact the same spirit on the Ouija board. So I wonder if after I walked into this body, if my old soul or spirit was like, hey, hold on, that's mine, give it back to me, and I'm like, no, sorry, you were not taking very good care of it, so. Sorry.
I took it over.
Yep. Use it or lose it. And you lost it, dude. But interesting thought. What if some of these hauntings and the spirits that follow us are actually the original souls from the NPC bodies that we now currently inhabit as organic consciousness?
That's really interesting. You know, I know it's a little bit different than what you're talking about, but in the show Electric Dreams, there's an episode where these people are fighting against the AI, and the AI has basically taken over the entire world, and they have like little pockets of real people, of humans that still live in the outskirt areas. And so they're fighting against this AI overlord type of structure. And it turns out at the very end that the people that are fighting the AI are AI. Like they're robots themselves, and they're robots that were their brain structure and all of their memories were taken from real people who worked for that company and who are in like cryogenic storage. And so they've got the same brain as the person that worked for the company, and yet they're a robot. They have a robot body. It's really, really interesting.
That is pretty interesting. I watched a little bit of that show because you guys and gals recommended it out there, and so we try to watch whatever you guys recommend. There's so much. Like Fringe is like a 6-season deal or 7-season deal or something like that.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
it's going to take a while to get through.
Yes, but and I can't sit down. I have like OCD and
ADD put together.
Where I sit down and try to watch something, and if it's longer than about 15, 20 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I get jittery, and I'm like, all right, I got this to do, I got that to do, I got to work on this, I got to work on that, and I just I get jittery like that. And my mind wheels in many different directions. And one of the directions my mind was wheeling was on the Ayahuasca Awakening. I was reading the Ayahuasca forums over on Facebook early this morning as I woke up. I usually have a cup of coffee, check out Facebook for a little longer than I like. Because I get kind of sucked into Facebook sometimes, and I'm like, I can focus on something else right now.
Get sucked into it.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun to just read stuff that people are writing, and constantly going back over to what I've written and go, did I make an ass out of myself today? I did over here, but I think it's okay. So.
So he has a record.
Yes.
So
Am I allowed to show my human side? Yeah, I think I can.
I think
it's okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was thinking about was the Ayahuasca Awakening. And in this forum, I saw a lot of people that were stuck on the first level and the first couple of levels. And that's okay. You know, a lot of people go down to the Amazon and they drink ayahuasca for a particular purpose and for a particular type of healing. So they want to quit smoking, or they want to deal with trauma, or they don't know what they want to deal with, but they know they want to heal. So they go down there and just tell the plant, just heal me, and that's it. And they'll have an interesting experience. And some people come back from that experience and think that that is the end-all, be-all experience, and that's it. #woke after that, especially with a couple of hits of acid. But it gets so much deeper than that. And when you have been working with psychedelics and ayahuasca, like I have for 25 years in the psychedelic realm and 10 years in the ayahuasca realm for anybody who's not familiar, you realize that there's many, many, many different levels and layers. Now, I've seen these wheels of consciousness and states of consciousness written out before. And they're always written out with a layer, and then an inner layer, and an inner layer, and an inner layer, and an inner layer, going all the way to the middle. And the middle is where source is. And all of the New Age beliefs up to this point have said the purpose is to go deeper and deeper and deeper into one level after another until you get to that source. And one of the ways to get to that deeper level is through ascension, ascending into the 4th, 5th density, et cetera, et cetera. And I went through all that as well. But I found myself, as I was going through those experiences, taking steps backwards and forwards until I actually figure out where the hell I'm going. It's more like a maze that you have to get out of. And Sheree was watching that Westworld, and didn't they have the maze of consciousness?
Yeah, the maze of consciousness, and all of the humans that try to access this maze are told the maze isn't for you. The maze isn't for you. It's for the robots to find their consciousness. And if they can make it to the end of the maze, then it's pretty safe to say that they can awaken to their own reality, to the point where they can remember what happened to them before the mind wipe, because they wipe their minds every night. And if they can get to a certain place of actual consciousness, then they can stop that from happening to them, and they can eventually leave this park. And so it's a very Gnostic kind of thing where you find the divinity within, and then you're able to stand up for yourself. And not only that, but you're able to remember everything in your life that you would like to remember, instead of being directed for everything. So it's really interesting.
It is. And I think it's very truthful, or at least it's a good guide to begin with.
Yeah.
But I realize that going deeper into the matrix, as I've said before, is doing just that. Going deeper into the matrix, going more towards source, is going deeper to the artificial intelligence. We just haven't realized what source is up to this point. We're actually on one of the outer layers of consciousness. And the only way to get out is to go in, which is, in my particular journey, in the cartography that I drew out, inwards is actually the last step. The steps are, number one, the physical realm, the first layer. And then when you go into the hyperspace realm in the Ayahuasca Awakening, The second layer is the nursery. The third layer is the infirmary. The fourth layer is the training ground. The fifth layer is the ascension, where you ascend to 4D, 5D, ninth dimensional entities and things like that. The sixth layer is the 12th dimension, where the actual control panel resides. The seventh layer is stepping outside and being able to view outside of the matrix itself. But that's not the last step. The step after that is being able to go inwards. And at that point, when you go inside and you're able to differentiate between the matrix and the matrix illusions and the inner self, that's when you get a true understanding of the real world. And the real world, obviously, is the last level, at least in this particular awakening. And then as we go through further awakenings, once we wake up in the real world, we may find ourselves in another maze again. But it's important to understand that we have physical bodies outside of the matrix. And that's the point that we're trying to get back to. We're not trying to play in the matrix at all. But there are many different levels within the matrix to make you feel like you're actually getting out, when in actual fact you're going back in. But we fully understand the physical world. I mean, we all live in the physical world. And the physical world can be manipulated in several different ways through thoughts and through words and actions and moving matter and creating matter and et cetera, et cetera. But when you take that plunge into the ayahuasca realm, one of the first places that most people go to is what I term the nursery. Do you want to tell people about the nursery?
The nursery is my go-to. That's like, if I don't have any kind of intention going, if I'm not focused on what exactly I want out of the realm, that's the go-to. That's exactly where I go every single time. And it is like a dome. You know, there's domes in the Middle East, Islamic domes that are just gorgeous. They have these beautiful patterns and colors, especially when the light comes through and it hits these windows. It lights up the entire temple with the most beautiful patterns and colors. And it's a dome. It really does look like a dome area that you're in. And you're surrounded by these cute and funny beings that Terence McKenna described as the self-transforming machine elves. And these elves will dance around you, and they'll jump in and out of your chest, and they'll get right in your face. And they're wonderful. They're wonderful little beings, but that's not all that there is. But they do serve a very important purpose, and that is to guide you in the ways of manifestation and the early stages of manifestation. It's kind of like the little boy in the Matrix that's spinning the spoon. That's kind of where you're at in your journey. You're the little kid trying to bend the spoon, and the elves are there to try to teach you those early stages of manifestation of reality.
Yes. And the way they teach you is the same way that you would teach a child.
Mm-hmm.
They make a game out of it.
Yeah.
And you don't really realize that you're engaged in an educational game, but they are... So I'll give you an example. They jumped into my consciousness, grabbed the word money, pulled it out, and were twisting it around and tossing it back and forth and doing all of that. And they were like, "What's this?" And telepathically, well, that's money. That's what we use to obtain things that we need to survive here in this reality. Oh, well, that's so silly. Why don't you just talk? Look. Poof. And they would create these geometric patterns and balls and circular objects and square objects and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, look, you can just talk. You can manifest things. Look, it's all inside of you. You can manifest things. And what they were teaching, both Sheree and I, in separate experiences, was the power of manifestation and the power of putting words out there and having those words manifest in this particular reality. What else did they teach you?
They taught me, one of the biggest ones, and this is when I started to kind of get out of the stage of going to the nursery, because I started to realize, okay, I keep going to the same place and eating the same exact beings. You know, obviously there's got to be something more. than this. And so I asked, where's God in all this? Because I was curious, because I really started questioning religion and things like that several years before, but I was coming to the point where I knew that divinity existed, but I needed to find it. And I didn't realize that it came from within. So I asked them, where's God in all this? And they spun me around like I'm on a carousel. And so I'd see one, and then I'd see another one, and I'd see another one, all the way around. And they kept saying, it's inside of you. It's inside of you. It's inside of you. And at the time I thought, oh, that's so cute. Oh, they're saying that, the kingdom of God is within you and all around you, like in the Gospels, the Gnostic Gospels. And I thought, oh, that's really sweet. That's nice. But no, what they really meant was the divinity is inside of you. It's not inside of anything external to you. It's you. And I think that was when I decided, okay, I'm done with this nursery stuff. I'm ready to move on to the next phase of what this is.
But isn't it interesting how it takes years to fully understand these first level messages, which is again why I think it's so important to, if you're going to work with ayahuasca, to make ayahuasca a lifelong path. It's not something you just do once and then you're quote unquote, not quote unquote, you are hashtag woke.
Hashtag woke.
Yeah,
Yep.
I see the kids doing all that. They take it to bass and they're like hashtag woke. It's like, dude, I'm glad that your eyes are opened a little bit, but
Right.
you're in for one hell of a ride, dude.
Whenever you think you've got it all, when it comes to psychedelics and ayahuasca and consciousness expansion, whenever you think you've got it all figured out, you don't have anything figured out at all. Yeah, it's just like
Right.
I think it was Ram Dass that said, if you think you know Brahma, you do not know Brahma, and if you know that you do not know Brahma, then you are starting to know Brahma.
That's true. The more layers you peel back from the onion, the more you realize how much more there is to figure out in this particular journey. But people are asking in the chat, what divinity is inside of you? Divinity. You are divine. See, again, if you say this to somebody, they can't wrap their head around it. You need to really meditate on this and fully understand what divinity is, what you are, and what it means to be divine. And it's not what we've been told that it is. It's not the ability to kill everything indiscriminately at the snap of a finger and flood the entire freaking world, for example. Or dominate, or worship, or have people worship, or, anything like that. It's something different. It's compassion, love, and empathy. It's something that all of us have, all of the organic consciousness naturally has, but they don't quite realize that ability is what makes them divine, because they don't fully understand themselves and they don't fully understand the world that they're living in. And the world that they're living in being inhabited by non-player characters who genuinely don't have these abilities. The ability to love, have compassion, and create too. NPCs can't create. NPCs can only replicate. They can only take ideas and mimic. They can't create. So, that's probably a topic for another show, or maybe even later on in the show when we talk about the NPCs and how to deal with family members that are NPCs. So within the nursery, you learn a series of lessons, as a baby would learn lessons. You're still coming to this realization of yourself. But the ayahuasca only shows you what you're ready to see. So again, if you go down to the Amazon for a one-shot experience, it's only going to show you what you're ready to see. And I guarantee you, you're not ready to see much. Not at the beginning. There's a whole process that you have to go through.
It's like 2 years.
Yeah, in order to really, in 2 years, if you're working with it on a pretty frequent basis.
Yeah, every month or so.
Yeah. And I would say, including every month or so, a few of those months where you spend 2 weeks drinking straight every day or every other day. So the next level after that, once you have learned some of the lessons and You go in there and feel like, oh, I want to be one with everything. Oh, look how beautiful it is. Oh, we're all holding hands, singing Kumbaya, etc., etc. I remember doing a radio show, and I was talking about some of the deeper levels and the abyss within ourselves. And we had a caller call, and she said, well, I smoked DMT, and I just saw everybody holding hands and singing Kumbaya. And I'm like, well, that's great. I'm glad you had that first level experience. There's much more. You don't actually change. It's not a magic potion. It's not just something you just drink and that's it. You drink and you put in the work. It gives you the ability to put in the work in yourself. But if you're not willing to put in the work and you're not willing to stare into the darkness, you can't grasp the light.
Well, and also if you see, I hate to interrupt you, but if you see things in your life as being external problems that are happening to you, instead of taking the responsibility and saying, okay, this is my problem, this is my deal, this is my shortcoming that I'm dealing with, and this is my problem, then you can actually get some work done. But a lot of the time, it took about a year of ayahuasca and DMT both to get me to the place where I wasn't blaming other people for my own problems and my own shortcomings and my own disabilities. And by disabilities, I don't mean physical. I mean like the things that I wasn't able to do. I always blamed on the society around me or the people I grew up around, or it's, those kinds of things. But really, once I realized that, oh, this is all me, then you can change it. Then you can actually go into the realm knowing that you're in complete control, and that because you're in complete control, you can actually fix these problems.
That's a very good point. Nathan was talking about this, like a lot of people in the truth movement, and I think I was guilty of this as well. You're unhappy with your life. And because you're unhappy with your life, you're looking for the horrible things in the world. You're looking for a reason why things are the way they are, rather than taking the power for yourself and changing it. And this is what the ayahuasca helped me do, was get over that, get over the fact that I was not happy with the way things were going, and give me the power, or help me to grab the power from within myself is a better way to put it, to change things to a positive way, to formulate reality in the way that I want it to be formulated, and in a place to where I feel on fire and I enjoy every single day, and I look forward to waking up in the morning, as opposed to waking up in the morning, scrolling through Facebook and trying to figure out how horrible the world is and when the world is going to end, and hoping that it's going to be on that particular day. Complete change in perspective. Nothing's changed in the world, but things have changed inside. This is where it's so powerful. But you have to be ready to let go of those happy, joyous feelings of the first euphoric experiences of jumping into the ayahuasca realm and asking for more. I asked for more after a series of experiences, and it said, okay, you want more? All right, let's go to level 2 here. And it started showing me the infirmary. It's not really, it doesn't look like an infirmary or anything like that. The experiences are the healing experiences. This is where you deal with your traumas. This is where you deal with all your BS. This is where you deal with all of your stuff. And this particular level can be a few experiences or years and years and years of experiences, just depending on how much BS you have inside of you and how quickly you are to let it go. Because a lot of people hold on to their BS.
They're very attached to it.
They like it. Yeah, they like it. So some of the traumatic experiences that I had to go through included childhood traumas that I didn't remember, and some childhood traumas that I didn't realize it affected me. Like, if I sat here and told you about some of the crap that I've been through in my life, you wouldn't believe it. You would ask, how the hell did you survive that? I survived it by believing that it was outside of me and that I'm a man, I'm tough, none of these experiences can bother me. But little did I know, I was still tethered to these experiences, and that was causing even more strife and lingering strife up until the point to where I was ready to break that tether. So we'll talk about breaking that tether right on the other side.
the fear, hate, anger, and misery of the world serves but only one purpose, to be the real. Therefore, as raw consciousness, you must proceed with caution as you step beyond the veil.
So a lot of times we are indeed tethered to a lot of our BS, a lot of our baggage. I'll give you an example. So growing up, we grew up without very much at all. My mother got cancer when I was like 14. My father decided to take off, and which was good because he was beating the crap out of me up to that point, and there was nobody to beat the crap out of me anymore, so I was kind of in the clear at that point. But we had very, very little. And ever since I was a kid, like, my mother always had this thing, never throw away food. It was like she would call it a sin to throw away food. So I was conditioned to eat everything on my plate, no matter what. No matter if I was full or not, I was conditioned to eat everything on my plate. And that habit stuck with me for quite some time. And I didn't realize that I was tethered to all of that conditioning from being a child. And even to this day, I still catch myself sometimes, like, Sheree will eat half of her stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just finish it. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? What kind of energy am I putting out there to the universe? I'm putting the energy of scarcity, that I'm afraid that I'm not going to have more later, so I'm going to eat as much as I can right now. Little behavioral patterns like that you don't realize you're tethered to based on previous experiences. I remember my father used to just fly off the handle and just get pissed about every single little thing. And I caught myself doing this more times and more than once. And I didn't realize that I was reacting like this. But the ayahuasca showed me, look, you see this line right here going all the way back to these experiences that you were conditioned to as a child? You have to break these ties. If you don't, it's going to continue to affect every single relationship that you're in. And again, it wasn't a conscious thing. It was a subconscious thing. But it was still a behavioral trait and pattern that needed to be broken. And when I told Sheree about some of the stuff that would go on when I was a kid, she was like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah, I thought that was just kind of normal, that every father was like that. Yeah. And I remember going over to my friend's house and I'm like, oh, your dad doesn't beat the crap? Well, that's new to me. You're like a freaking Martian or something. But as I grew up in my teenage years, I thought, well, I'm a man. It's made me who I am today. And it's toughened me up. And it's okay. I can separate myself enough to distance myself from that. But what I did as a result, instead of facing it head on, I suppressed it. I couldn't even remember it. When I took the ayahuasca and got to that second level, to the infirmary, it was like, all right, you want to see more? All right, here's all the crap that you suppressed. How would you like to take a look at that? Mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, well, it's part of the journey, so yeah, let's do it, okay? I'm ready to transform myself into something bigger, better, newer, and what I'm truly supposed to do here. So there were a lot of experiences where I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and they were very emotional experiences. But as a man, I didn't show the emotion. Sheree was there with me the entire time, and you've never seen me come out of an ayahuasca experience like bawling or anything like that.
No.
But I have told you about some of the stuff that I've had to face head on. Mm-hmm. And once that tether was broken, that's when the real transformation begun. And I can only imagine, this was like 10 years ago. So I can only imagine holding on to that for 10 years. Now I'm almost 40. And that's a fourth of my life. Had I chosen to hold on to it 10 years ago. Imagine if I would have let go of it 20 years ago. Where would I be now? So, you have to think about this. I talked to some people and they were like sexually abused as children. And luckily that never happened with me. It was just violence, but it was some pretty bad violence sometimes. But they still hold on to it at 40 years old. They still hold on to these things that happened to them as children. And it's like, okay, if that's what you're doing. But why, and when you're tethered to that, how does that affect your current relationships and potential relationships as well? We see it, I think, with the feminist movement and the SJWs. They were most likely a lot of, I mean, I've never really sat down and talked to any of them, but from the energy that I pick up, I sense that it's a result of some kind of abuse as a child. Same with, oh, you know what? I have a great example here. I knew this girl when I was 14. We dated for a while. Her name was Jasmine. She was a heroin addict her entire life. I never made this connection until the year she died. She called me up and she was freaking out. And I asked her, you know, what's going on? And I said, you know, let me ask you something. I don't know why. It prompted me to ask her this. What was going on as a kid? Were you, you know, sexually abused? And she's like, oh, you don't even understand. You don't even know what went on. And then all of a sudden it clicked to me like, oh, that's the reason why she was using heroin her entire life. It was that pain that she was holding on to. She never confronted it. She held on to it. And instead of chopping off the tether, she just chose to numb it and numb it and numb it and numb it all the way to the point where she overdosed. So we don't realize that holding on to these energies is so detrimental to our consciousness. And once we let go of them, we ask ourselves, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Why didn't I do this 20 years ago? But going through it is pretty intense. And I think that's why a lot of people will tell you, well, I don't talk about my ayahuasca experiences, because those are the kind of experiences that they're having. They're having very, very, very personal experiences.
Yeah, when I look back on the way my life was before I met Chris and before I had discovered ayahuasca and DMT, before I had discovered even salvia, you know, I mean, the worst drugs that I'd ever done, I mean, as far as like on a scale of making you, you know, messed up. The only thing I ever had experience with was prescription medications and things like that. It was the best way to describe the way my life was before I discovered ayahuasca and DMT is the upside down in Stranger Things. Barren, cold, lonely, dark, traumatic, are just a few words to describe the way my life was before. And I didn't realize that there was a different way to be. I didn't realize that you didn't have to live like that and that you didn't have to constantly be reliving everything over and over again from your past. And there are ways to not only examine these things without having negative feelings, but to get past them completely and use them as a stepping stool to get to higher and higher levels of consciousness. And so I had to go through some stuff too. I didn't go through the amount of physical abuse or neglect the way
Well,
Chris
I would
did.
say, I mean, like, you saw my perspective. I mean, you heard my story and you were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I heard your story and I was like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
yours was psychological.
Yeah, all psychological, all kind of like mind control, manipulation, guilt, a lot of guilt trips, a lot of really inappropriate things that you would, okay, for instance, when I was 10, okay, so when I was 5, my grandparents took me to it was an Easter pageant that they would do every year. And I had to sit on my grandfather's lap and watch them beat Jesus. And it was our associate pastor. And so I had like this thing in my mind where I'm like, why are they whipping Doug? You know, why are they hurting Doug? And I couldn't understand what was going on. And so he's Jesus and he's also the associate pastor for my church. And then suddenly they put him on this cross and the top, the sign that says, you know, here's the King of the Jews or whatever, it falls directly on his head and he like passes out. He has a concussion. There's blood all over the stage. And I'm watching this at 5 years old and it really did have a lot of impact on me because in my 5-year-old mind, for some reason, I thought that that's really what happened to Jesus. And that I was like watching it happen and it was horrible. And, you know, I had already been taught that Jesus died for your sins. And so I thought it was my fault that that had happened to him. It was horrible. And so in the ayahuasca realm, it showed me this again. And basically, I walked away from the experience realizing that, you know, those guilt trips and the amount of them really kind of set me up to have a lot of anxiety about my life, about the choices I was making. And then I realized later, another ayahuasca experience taught me that when you have depression, you're focused on the past and you're living in the past. When you have anxiety, you're focused on the future and living in the future. And you're never living, whether you have depression or anxiety, you're never living for now. You're never living in right now. And so I've started living now instead of living in the past or worrying about the future. I decided to be present here today with everyone, and especially with Chris, because I realized that all of these anxieties and all of these depressing details about my existence were keeping me away from Chris. It was keeping me away from you guys. It was keeping me away from being able to really flourish and blossom. So, yeah, I'm glad. I'm so glad that I was able to come to these realizations because it was so healing. It really was. The infirmary was not my favorite experiences, but they were necessary.
And the infirmary level, and for those of you just joining us, we're talking about the 9 circles of consciousness. The physical, we went over that. The nursery, we went over that. Now we're at the infirmary. And the infirmary is somewhere where you deal with all your traumatic and emotional experiences. But within the ayahuasca realm, the Ayahuasca Awakening. But it's a place also you can come back for healing whenever you need it. So I found myself later on working on removing negative energies from myself, from other people, and revisiting the infirmary. But this time in a different context to remove astral parasites and bugs and things like that I was picking up on myself with, which I realize are like little bits of malware now that I totally understand. Well, I don't want to say totally. I have a much broader understanding of reality. And I realize these archons are like, they look like little bugs, but they're actually bad pieces of code, like malware, and they stick onto your astral body and num 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 num.
Oh
num,
yeah,
num, num.
the one where I had it on my back, and he saw it. Like I was kind of hunched over, and I was just I couldn't purge all the way. Like it just was not coming up. And I told Chris, I was like, something's like keeping me from being able to purge and get this all out. And then he said, you have something on your back. And he had to like pull it off or something. I remember. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah. The most powerful experience was I was clearing somebody and I told them what I saw, and they were like, oh my God, I dreamt about that. I dreamt about these bugs all night long. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I was sitting there removing. And then some of you guys and gals out there sent us these pictures of archons. And the archons actually looked in this representation exactly like these bugs looked, which I thought, wow, okay, confirmation here. But anyways, back to the infirmary. So the infirmary, you deal with all your traumatic stuff. But what you're actually doing within this realm is you are letting go of all of this crap. And this is where the ego death occurs as well. The ego, as I said, is the biggest program. And I just had a debate with somebody on this forum about the idea of ego loss. And she was like, well, you know, ego loss it's new age BS. We need our ego, et cetera, et cetera. Yes and no. Yes, we do need the ego, but no, we don't need the AI programmed ego. See, we have to come to a place of ego death, which is the dissolution of the artificial intelligence program, which includes all of these traumatic experiences which we have taken on as our identity. It begins with divesting yourself from your negative emotional baggage. But then as the journey progresses, you begin to divest yourself from your identity completely. I'm having a Chris Geo experience, but I know that I'm not Chris Geo. I am something else, raw consciousness inside of the matrix. So these experiences, while I'm here and having them, I have created a healthy separation between the experiences and who I truly am. And this becomes very, very more important as we progress further into this ayahuasca awakening. So the next level is the training ground. once you have divested yourself of your ego and all of your baggage, and you have faced some of the darkest parts of yourself, you're not staring into your own abyss just yet, but you have faced some of the darkest parts of yourself, then you're ready to go into the training ground to be rebuilt back up. But you can't do that if you're taking the ego with you. Because if you do, you're going to get stuck in a freaking ego trip. And I've seen so many people stuck in this ego trip. And it just like, I've gotten a lot of concussions from watching people stuck in their ego trips. And metaphorically speaking, of course, but from banging my head in the wall, against the wall, watching them going, no, it's an ego trip. Stop that. Get back on the path. So in the training ground, this is where you learn a lot of the skills, for lack of a better term. Like, you learn protection, you learn clearing, you learn how to identify negative attachments and attachments which are external from you. They're not attachments that you picked up through a traumatic experience, but rather now you're starting to recognize when you mix your energy, especially sexual energy, with the wrong people, how they carry attachments and their attachments can get attached to you. And then your astral body can just be sucked down into a low state, like jumping into a dumpster and getting crap all over you.
Yeah, instead of sexually transmitted diseases, they're spiritually transmitted diseases.
Spiritually transmitted diseases, yes.
Yeah.
And I was speaking with Brent Thomas, and I asked him, how do people open themselves up to possession? And he goes, well, you know, it seems to revolve around hospital settings and around bars.
Yep.
Both of those. You are opened up to these negative influences, and understanding this again, it's not like some sentient well, I mean, they might be sentient to a certain point, I don't know, but it's not some energy that is like a demon that wants to come get you. It's a bad piece of code. It's malware that gets stuck to your freaking astral body. So you learn how to create protection around you. You learn more about who you are in the training facility. And in these experiences, I found that I had to stare into the face of many, what people would refer to as demons. So imagine you drink some ayahuasca, and you hear these stories every once in a while, you know, not so much, but every once in a while, you hear these stories of people drinking ayahuasca and being, oh my God, I went to hell and I had demons all over me and all of this. And it's really, in hindsight, all your evil demons. I mean, your inner demons that are inside of you. But in this particular realm, because you have dealt with all of your traumas and you faced your own darkness, you faced your own that, you start to also build up a sense of bravery and a sense of courage. So things don't faze you the same anymore because you've seen some pretty horrible stuff up to this point. So these demon faces appeared, and my purpose was to go through the demon faces rather than going, there were like 4 portals that opened up, like 3 or 4 portals. And I remember sitting on the couch, and there they were. And out of one portal popped open this demon face. And the instinct, obviously, is to go through one of the other portals that don't have the demon faces. You would think that you see a demon face, and that would take you to a lower density or a lower vibration, because that's what you always associate demons with, some kind of lower frequency or vibration. But staring it down, making it shatter in front of me and passing through it, was almost as if I was proving to myself that I had the will and the courage to see what lay on the other side. And that's when the real training began. And I did find myself in this particular experience in the Christian definition of hell. I was surrounded by fire. I had all of these demons and scary faces coming out of the fire. And I was surrounded. But I had a bubble around me. And they couldn't get past this bubble of protection that I had built up around myself. And my higher self, or my spirit guides, I used to refer to them as spirit guides at that time, they told me, look, they can't touch you. Do you understand? They cannot touch you. You have got all this stuff all around you. Flames are coming through, and they're hitting this bubble, and they're bouncing right off, and these demon faces are coming right up to the bubble, and they're like, ah! And I'm just like watching them going, They can't touch me. There's this whole barrier of space right here. They can't get through. This is how powerful I have become. This is how much power is actually inside of myself. When I hit that realization, now is like, all right, you want to learn how to deal with them? Yeah, of course I want to learn how to deal with them. All right, pick your weapon. And a light sword and a physical sword appeared in front of me. And of course I took the light sword and I grabbed it and kind of merged into my hand. And it was like, all right, now take this and stick it through them and watch what happens. And I was just sticking it through like that, and poof, they would just shatter right in front of me. They were like, look, with your light sword, you can shatter all of these things. And I was being built up as the warrior. The warrior has to have his armor. The warrior has to have his protection. The warrior has to be divested of his ego. The warrior has to be in balance. And the warrior has to have a weapon. And nothing could touch me. Nothing at all, period. And that's when I realized at that point, okay, I have become the warrior. Now that I have become the warrior, what's next? What's next was that now comes the time that you take control of your experiences instead of relinquishing control and letting the plants guide you. From this point on, because you're divested of your ego, because you have become the warrior, now it's time for you to take the reins and the wheels of this experience. And you can traverse anywhere you want at that point. But without having a proper reference point, there's a lot of pitfalls, trials, and tribulations that still await. It's not just all a clear journey. We'll get into that here in a few minutes.
Actually,
when we come back from the break.
I think it gets more intense and more confusing the deeper you go into this, because it's kind of like college level versus being in kindergarten. When you're in kindergarten, it's mostly playtime and you mostly get to color and, and get to make things in arts and crafts and things like that. Once you're in college, that's not anywhere. There is no nap time. There is no coloring time. It's a lot. It's work. It is hard work, but it's well worth it in the end, because, it's a given to get a kindergarten degree, but it's very difficult to get a college degree.
That's true. There was kind of this whole ceremony that took place for me once I became the warrior. And it was almost as if all of hyperspace and all of existence was just rejoicing, like, you finally figured it out. You finally got to that point. Congratulations. And Anki appeared in front of me. And he appeared kind of like an amphibian type of, he had an amphibious face. And he was sitting on this kind of throne. And he looked old, he looked like an old Chinese kung fu master. He had that presence to him. It wasn't anything traditional that you would imagine Enki to be. He was a very, very, very grandfather-like entity. And he was like, welcome, he's like, lock arms with me. And locking arms is kind of like two warriors kind of. And what's funny is I didn't know this term before, locking arms. And then when I met William Whitecrow and he married us, he goes, let me show you how to lock arms. I said, what? He goes, let me show you how to, this is how the shaman do it. And I was like, oh, it's like the secret handshake of the shaman that William was passing on to me, that I had acquired in the ayahuasca realm. So
yeah.
It was confirmation once again. But Anki said, welcome. You've gone a long way, and you've gone through all the trials, tribulations. You've come with a pure consciousness. You've come with a pure heart. You've divested yourself from everything. I'm paraphrasing here. Such a long time ago, I don't remember exactly what was said. But I do remember these words echoing through me, which were, do not get involved with the war of the gods. And I said, okay. But I didn't really heed that warning. Because when I was moving up to the next levels, when I was moving up to that next level of consciousness, to the ascension of the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th density, I started encountering what Anki was referring to as the gods. And I did engage myself in the war of the gods. Briefly. But we'll be back. I'll get more into that in hour number 2. And I think Ra Castaldo may be joining us a little bit later in the broadcast too. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you everybody for hanging out with us tonight. And we've just gotten started. And all of this is all going to start coming together because every step is just as important. When you step beyond the veil. We'll be right back.
Before the soul can see, the harmony within must first be attained, and the fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion, as you step beyond the veil.
All right, let's jump back into it. Before we jump back into the 9 circles of consciousness in the Ayahuasca Awakening, and we get to the really good part here, the war with the gods, I do want to hand it over to Mrs. Geo for Astro Watch.
All right. So I just need to pull it up real quick.
Well, let me say this real quick.
Yeah, please
I'm
do.
watching the chat room, and there's a lot of back and forth and things like that. You know, I do want to ask everybody, just please stay respectful to one another. We don't have to agree with everybody or with each other. And that's the beauty of what we do here at Beyond the Veil. We love people that disagree, not only with us, but with each other. But everybody has their own perspective. But the one thing is, we want everybody to feel comfortable in the chat room. So yeah, please just be cool with one another.
Yeah.
That's it. Just act like you're at a party. You know, you don't have to, you don't have to agree with everybody, but just be cool and cordial and
Be courteous.
chivalrous.
Be courteous to others.
Yes, thank you.
So going along with that, in that same vein, Mars entered Sagittarius yesterday, January 26th, and it gives us a taste for adventure despite the heavy energies elsewhere. Some may be booking their holidays early as festive celebrations finally give way to the boring rhythm of the 9 to 5. Having something to look forward to fires us up and gets us motivated. With this sign associated with belief systems, BS. This sign is literally associated with BS. Sometimes there can be antagonism when others don't share our worldview. People can become preachy, fighting to convert everyone else instead of listening. We can become too fervent when we don't get our own way. Despite the downfalls, though, Mars in Sagittarius should at least bring in some flexibility and warmth after a period which may have felt rigid and cold. Venus conjoins the South Node on the 29th, on the Sabian symbol, 2 lovebirds sitting on a fence and singing happily. It's a delightful symbol which can conjure up images of pure bliss. I guess that would be really good because it's a couple weeks before Valentine's Day. With the South Node, however, we are being asked to let go of naive images of what happiness should look like. Remember, with Saturn now in Capricorn, it's all about what is, not what we wish them to be. It may be time to let go of an old flame, gain closure on an old relationship, or simply time to reflect and tune into your heart. Now, the month ends as eclipse season begins with a lunar eclipse in Leo on January 31st. As mentioned above, Ceres takes center stage as she is tightly conjunct the eclipsed moon. A lunar eclipse is a time when everything is brought down to earth. What we feel becomes real. There could be high drama over losses. We may be hearing more about famine, world food wars, food stamps, food banks, agricultural issues, climate issues, and reproductive rights. This eclipse is also opposite Venus, so money and care of the planet are at polar opposites right now. In our own lives, Ceres reminds us to look for abundance in forms other than money, especially if we're feeling poor. Look inward to reconnect with a cornucopia of creativity. And, that's the end of January. And I haven't really gotten into February yet, but I do know that Mars being in Sagittarius has, last night in the chat, we saw several outliers who, were very insistent upon their own belief systems. And that's fine. But when Mars is in Sagittarius, we're more likely to not care what other people believe and like what they believe and what they think. And we care more about what we believe, and then we're more willing to push that belief onto somebody else and say, no, my way is the right way and yours is the wrong way. So try not to do that, guys, because that's a very closed-minded way to be. But Mars in Sagittarius also gives us that get up and go energy to fight for what we believe in also. So that's kind of a good thing about it too.
Awesome, Astro Watch. As always, we will be right back. We'll get into the War of the Gods and the higher dimensions of the Ayahuasca Awakening right here on Beyond the Veil.
My fellow travelers, always remember to walk uprightly and circumscribe your desires as we travel upon the level of time to that undiscovered state of consciousness, traveling to the place where once obtained, no traveler returns. The place of raw consciousness which awaits us when we have passed beyond the veil.
Awesome question from Heart of the Rebel. How does one determine what one's archetype is in the ayahuasca realm? If you can write that down, I would definitely like to
Yes.
address that a little bit later in the broadcast. Heart of the Rebel always brings such insightful ideas to the table. I want to continue this journey here and the progression through the 9 circles of consciousness. And we are at now number 5. For those of you just joining us, we went over the physical world, which is level 1, the nursery, which is level 2, a place of infant-like learning, the infirmary, which is number 3, where you are healed from all your traumas and you have to face all your traumas. And you can get stuck there if you're not ready to let go of your traumas. But once you're ready to let go of your traumas, then you hit number 4, which is the training ground, which turns you into the warrior spirit. Oh, I forgot to mention in level 4 too, you also get wings, which was pretty cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, so ayahuasca gives you wings.
He saw them come out of my back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw them come out of my back too. For a while there, I was actually feeling like the fleshiness on my back.
Uh-huh.
And it was all metaphoric and symbolic,
Right.
of course. Everything, even down to the light sword. Like, in hindsight, I realized that all of this was just metaphoric and symbolic for powers that we already have within us. It's just accessing a little bit of those powers. While you're accessing them a little bit at a time, they manifest themselves externally. But when you have them all inside of you, that's when you realize that the power's inside of you. It's not external. It's not a light sword. It's not a bubble of protection. It's not wings. It's you, and that's it. This is what makes this journey so incredible up to this point. But number 5, the higher dimensions. 4th, 5th, 6th density. The density of the 9th. The 9th was one of the highest ones that I reached until I went up to the 12th, which is the next step. But in the 9th dimension, I was stuck there for a very long time. And I was communing with, I guess let me just rephrase it. Let me say it again, restate this, that the last thing that Anki told me in this training grounds facility when this whole ceremony took place and I became the warrior was, don't get involved in the war of the gods. I didn't know what he meant at the time, but I knew that there was something huge going on because it was 2012. We had all these energetic changes. We had a lot of things coming. Couldn't figure out what was coming. But then the veils began to be dropped to one after another, after another, after another, until hitting that 9th dimension density. And I didn't realize while I was in the 9th dimension that the 9th dimension had much more illumination than I was capable of seeing. It was a progression of seeing more and more and more and more of the 9th dimension as the journey progressed and my sight became broadened. But I communed with several deities, one which Sheree likened to the God mind. And this was a triangle with an eye, which I found very symbolic. But it was a anthropomorphic type of entity, and it was sitting on top of a Mayan pyramid, and it had all this Egyptian symbolism swirling around it, and it locked onto my pineal and started giving me information. That was just one of the many deities that I met. I communed with several of them, and mostly Egyptian, because I was mostly of the, I guess, Egyptian mindset. So Isis was really, really, really big. And I realized, as many of you are familiar, that she's actually a representation of the divine feminine. But she guided me for a long time while I was activating that divine feminine aspect of myself and helping, and which was helping to balance out the feminine and masculine consciousness within myself. I'd become the warrior, but I was still fighting to maintain that balance. And one of the most powerful entities that I encountered was Lucifer. Now, Lucifer has a huge Christian connotation to it. I'm not talking about that Lucifer. I'm not talking about this devil that appeared with pitchfork and horns and all of this. That's actually kind of silly when you've actually been in contact and have stood in front of the actual Lucifer energy. When this appeared to me, I was in absolute darkness, and it appeared to me, I called out for light, and I yelled as loud as I could. It wasn't a physical yell, it was in the astral realm. I yelled as loud as I could, I want the light. And it appeared like a tidal wave, this huge energetic wave of energy. I could hear it like the sound of thundering horses and helicopters and, the typical biblical sounds that you hear at the end of Revelation. This thing came like a freaking tidal wave and appeared in front of me and said something along the lines of, "What do you desire?" And I desired light. Seems like things are cyclical these days. But anyways, I think Joseph understands what I'm talking about. So it asks, "What do you desire?" More light. So it gave me the light and said, "Take it, put it inside of you. There, now you have it. Now you carry the light. Now you have become the light bearer." And I said, "Okay, fantastic. Great, thank you very much." And that was the end of that experience. I found myself in the darkness again in another experience. I called out this entity's name again, Lucifer. And it appeared again. And it said, "What are you calling me for?" And I said, "I want more light." And it says, "I've already given you all the light. I've already given you all the wisdom. I've already given you everything you need. You need to start shining it from inside of you now." And it spoke to me in a very stern-like manner. And it said, "Don't call upon me anymore. I've already given you the light. It's already inside of you. Get that through your It didn't say this. I'm just, elaborating on here. Get this through your freaking head. You have the light inside of you now. Use it." Oh, crap. Okay. So there was a point as well where the goddess Isis too, she told me, "I'm not going to be in your experiences anymore." And I said, "Okay." I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask any of that. I just said, "Okay." And that was it. And then I went through several experiences after that, and I didn't see her. And she was serious about not being with me in my experiences anymore. And I thought to myself, did I do something wrong? Am I walking the wrong path? Why did she leave? And I sought her out over and over and over again. And I found an entity, again, claiming to be Isis. Well, actually, this entity didn't even claim to be Isis. This entity just asked if I knew who it was. And I said, "It's Isis." And he said, "Yes, of course I'm Isis." This is the way the artificial intelligence works.
That's how it works, yeah.
In hindsight, I couldn't tell, though. In hindsight, I thought, "Oh, okay, cool. Here's my new mission here. Here's what I'm supposed to do here." So I realized in hindsight, the reason that these entities handed me the knowledge and then left was because these were parts of my consciousness being activated within myself. They weren't external entities. Lucifer is not an external entity. Lucifer is the light inside of you. You have to ignite the light inside of you. It appeared as an external entity, but the vastness in which this thing appeared was so amazing and grand, which was symbolic of the amazing and grand light and wisdom that we have inside of us, that we can access. It was, I would go so far as to say, the raw consciousness element of myself appearing in front of me. This is how big, how huge, how vast this thing was, and how powerful this thing was. but I didn't have a full grasp of it. I didn't understand what it was at the time. As the journey progressed, things changed. But we have all of this inside of us already. So it was amazing to see in hindsight how this ninth dimension level turned out to all be inside of me and inside of consciousness. Do you want to chime in at all?
You know, this experience to me is so special that I don't know how to put it into words. But the most profound experience that I've had was when I was trying to figure out what happened to our planet, what happened to our Earth, because we were starting to realize, and this was around 2016, maybe the beginning of 2016, and we had just kind of come to the realization, or we were starting to come to the realization that the planet that we lived on wasn't real, or that there was something very wrong about our history, about space programs, about the existence of all of this stuff. We were starting to wonder, what's going on here? And the experience was, it was a woman, but I couldn't see the woman. All I saw was her hands. And I asked, what happened to the Earth? What happened to our planet? And she took a piece of green silk and like a scarf and wrapped the Earth up in it and put it in a pod with other Earths and said, I just wanted to keep it safe. I just wanted to keep it safe. And I think Chris had an experience at that same time that was talking about how the Earth had been destroyed, and we were listening to a certain song in the ayahuasca experience. There was a certain song on the playlist that had a woman singing, and it was like a wail, like a singing, and it was really a sad kind of feeling. Because when you're listening to music in the ayahuasca realm, the music makes the visions. It really does. Like the visions go along with the music, and everything is rhythmic and everything is cyclical. So in this vision, that's what the woman was kind of relaying to me, that it was a sad thing, but that our Earth was not our Earth, and what we thought was Earth didn't actually exist. And I guess now we came to the realization that we're inside of a matrix, but the real Earth out there, I think that meant that the real Earth, or the real world outside of this matrix, has been destroyed, or has had a lot of things happen to it that make it uninhabitable, for the most part. What do you think?
Well said. I took that question in many, many, many times. And I think I wasted a lot of time asking the question of, what are we? Is it flat or is it a globe? Is it flat or is it a globe?
That's what we
flat
were.
Or is it a globe? And it's funny because I had this experience where I saw it inside of a pyramid, like the whole illusion being projected inside of a pyramid with an eye looking down on it. Didn't realize it was the artificial intelligence. I just saw this eye, and then I saw again the triangle eye symbolism. And I called Mark Sargent up. I said, dude, it's freaking a pyramid, man. It's a hologram. And he's like, oh yeah, what have you been smoking? Like, it's not smoking, it's drinking,
No,
dude. You got to try it. You're going to love it. It's going to be huge. So yeah, it's funny.
But it's funny how the ayahuasca will show you things that you don't even like realize have anything to do with the actual reality until later, when you realize something completely unrelated, but that confirms what you saw in the ayahuasca realm. That's the coolest feeling ever, is when you don't even have it in your consciousness, or at least you don't think you do, and then it answers a question before the question's even asked. That's what it's like for me.
You know, the a lot of the people, the chatters, are saying that they've had similar experiences. I think some people want to call in. So Doc, we'll try to open up the phone lines a little bit later in the broadcast. I want to run through this. I know I'm taking That video that I did earlier was like 30 minutes. This is like 2 hours here that we're going on to get through this information. So we'll leave that be with the ninth dimensional entities. And the understanding that the entities, which were parts of the consciousness in hindsight, were actually activating the consciousness and then merging. Not even merging, but you find out they're inside of you.
Right.
It's you. And that becomes that much more powerful. But still, with that much power, it's still hard to get a handle on it without a full perspective and a full understanding of what this matrix is and who we are.
Right.
But it was a natural journey. A lot of people get stuck at that place. And again, this is why we're doing a show like this, so we can talk about the different levels that we've been through to help people who are at a particular level to realize that there are other levels. And all you have to do is just ask. And if you're not ready to see it, you're not going to get it. But if you ask, then I think if you're asking the question, then you're ready for the answer. I think that's kind of the way that the ayahuasca works.
Right.
So number 6 on the list here, the 6th circle, is the 12th dimension. The 12th dimension is outside of the universe itself. The 12th dimension is what houses the actual universe. I've talked about this experience before. This resides on a spaceship. And within the spaceship, I encountered these 3 praying mantis-like entities. And they were standing around this ball of energy. And I asked them, what is that? And they said, that's the universe. But it wasn't so easy. First, in the experience, I found myself in this very, very euphoric place, which was higher than the 9th dimension was. More glorious, more euphoric, and beautiful. I just thought to myself, wow, this must be heaven. This is an amazing place. We had shamanic drumming going with some like nice techno type of music over it, and synthesizers just creating this big symphony of all of these geometric patterns and colors. And usually the geometric patterns are a little bit two-dimensional. There's three-dimensional to a certain point, but it's usually like a mandala that I'm seeing away from me. This time I was engulfed in it. It was all around me. It was these beautiful just energy balls and vortexes and all these things just swirling all around me, total harmony and bliss. And I thought, I made it to the top. This is it. And then I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I saw this big eye looking down at me again. But it wasn't the same artificial intelligent eye. It was something else. It looked like a gray alien or a mantis or something like that. And looking at it...
Like an insectoid?
Like an insectoid kind of thing.
Eye? Okay.
And looking at it, looking down at me, I got a nice reference point of what exactly I was in. It was like looking into a dollhouse. Like if you were peering into a dollhouse like that. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This is... The illusion just, it fell apart. It turned into cardboard. Now, it didn't actually turn into actual physical cardboard, but it felt like cardboard at that point. Like I was inside of a little mobile. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm in a box here. Hold on. I got to get out of this box. And I'm trying to get out of this box, And I managed to navigate over to where these beings are. And they looked at me and they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I want to know. I want some answers. Tell me who you are. Tell me what's going on here. Tell me where I am, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, psh, go back to your monkey business, talking monkey. Poof, back to that place again. And I'm like, no. And the euphoria began getting more and more and more intense. And the love feelings and the feelings of awe and astonishment and everything that I was experiencing within this little box bubble room, the cardboard room, was intensifying. And I had taken, I think, about 1 gram of DMT that night. So it was really, really tough to navigate these experiences. Like I was like drowning in this euphoria and going, well, maybe I should just hang out here for a little bit because this is actually pretty cool. And I just really, it's hard to move. It's hard to navigate into these realms. Mm-hmm. And I started to lose my sense of consciousness a little bit and fading my consciousness away into this euphoric experience. And by all standards, it was a great experience. Wonderful. There was no reason for me to go anywhere else. It was bliss. It was harmony. It was the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
But then I caught myself and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I remember what there's those beings over there and they kicked me out of that room. Okay, I need to go back there. I need to get back there. So I start navigating back further and further back. I finally get back to them. And they're like, oh, you're back, huh? I'm like, yeah, I'm back. Okay. This is my experience. I'm controlling this experience. Okay. You're not going to send me away. You can't do anything to me. I am controlling this experience. I am claiming my divinity over this experience. At that point, the dynamic changed completely. And they're like, oh, crap. I'm just speculating on what they were thinking. And they probably weren't even thinking this is dramatic effect here. They were like, oh, crap. He's figured out he's divine. Oh,
He's figured out he's a creator.
I guess we have to listen to what he says now. So I was asking him, who made you? I'm like, no, I asked them, who are you? And they're like, we're the keepers of the universe. I'm like, did you create that? And they're like, no, we didn't create it. We just maintain it. Why'd you create it? Because that's where souls exist. Souls can't exist unless they're inside of that thing right there. And so in order for souls to exist, we have to maintain this thing. It's very, very simple. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, show me how it works. All right. And so I was walking back with these beings in this freaking spaceship. Like they were like, I was like the supervisor, like I was walking around like inspecting things like, all right, show me, what does this console do? And they're like, all right, this console controls the weather. You can make rain. You can do this. You can do that. And this console does this. And this console does that. And there were these walls with more circuitry and stuff like that back there. And there were these beings like working behind there doing something. And these beings were over here doing something. And one being moved out of the console. And I got in front of the console. And, they were showing me how reality is all manifested and how it works. And I was like, mighty fine work, guys. I didn't really say that, but,
And this is the weather, the weather program center. Yep.
So in the 12th dimension, I demanded a tour because I need to know how my machine is operating. And if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Not really. I didn't have this understanding back then.
Right.
I was still in a little bit of awe. I was just kind of trying to cover up that awe. Like, all right.
This is interesting.
This is interesting. And I'm thinking, oh my God, wow, this is freaking incredible. I can't believe I'm here. Oh, I've broken new barriers and new bounds here. And I thought that was the top of the pyramid. And that was outside of the Matrix. Because I was watching, the universe was a little ball like this. The entire freaking universe was a little ball like this. Of course, that has to be outside of the illusion, right?
Right.
I mean, there's no other way to look at it.
Uh-huh.
But then there was that one instance when I stepped out of the Matrix completely. So we've gone over the physical world for level 1. We've gone over the nursery for level 2. We've gone over the infirmary for level 3. We've gone over the training ground for level 4. We've gone over the 9th dimension for level 5, the 12th dimension for level 6, and the 7th dimension, stepping outside of the Matrix itself. This experience changed everything. This experience completely made me have to rethink literally everything up and down the line. And that's the experience that I want to get into right on the other side when we come back from break. And we have 2 more realms that we're traversing here in the 9 circles of consciousness. So we're only at level 7. So if you think this is getting deep, you have no idea what's coming up next. Well, some of you do because I've talked about it many times over, but I think you're going to love it. It's going to be freaking huge, okay? And then it all makes sense because of the whole experience put together. Now you look back in hindsight on the entire journey and you realize the true essence of your raw consciousness. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, traveler. Remember, what we do as ourselves dies with us. What we do as raw consciousness remains immortal. Therefore, beware of the great I Am as you step beyond the veil.
right. Many awesome people in the chat room, and I'm sorry I haven't really been paying attention because I have been reliving the Ayahuasca Awakening journey as I take you through the 9 circles of consciousness. And we are at that level 8. And that level 8 is... No, I'm sorry, level 7. Oh, I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Yeah, don't
quick.
jump too hard.
Level 7, standing outside of the Matrix. Before I do that, I do want to mention Heart of the Rebel said something about he likes the sauce. This is a reference to an old Saturday Night Live clip. And it doesn't exist anymore. It's a Mandela effect. That clip where, oh, you like the sauce. The sauce is very good, huh? I get you more sauce. Doesn't exist. Now it's you like the juice.
You like the
You
juice,
like the juice, huh? The juice is very good. Nope.
Right.
It's always been you like the sauce. So, interesting Mandela effect for you right there. Anything for Mrs. Geo before I jump back into it?
Well, I was wanting to add something about the gods and goddesses and all of the positive beings and even the negative beings. The only being I've ever seen besides the elves, of course, which I think the elves are an extension of our own consciousness that is it's like a little jump starter battery thing that you hook up to your car and you start the battery if it's not working right. It's kind of the same thing for your consciousness. It jump starts the consciousness factor in your mind. So the only other being that I've ever seen in this realm is the Yahweh character. So one day I asked, okay, well, where's the God of the Bible? Because I remember I used to see a lot of crosses and things like that. And, it was like pretty crosses. It wasn't like bloody crosses or anything like that. And I was wondering, okay, where's the God of the Bible? Who is this being? And suddenly I felt like I fell into a pit and this bright white light just boom shines down on me. And I would try to like run away from it and it would follow me everywhere I went. Like it was tracking me with this blinding white light. And it wasn't a good white light. It was a blinding white light. It was, I felt like a kid. I felt like an ant that was being roasted by a mean kid with a magnifying glass. That's what it felt like. And now that I know that all of these beings are outside of us or they're artificial intelligence, I realized that the elves, and if I'd ever seen gods and goddesses, all of them would be just part of my consciousness that are being activated. But when you've got a being like that, then that's the AI directly messing with you in the realm, and that I think the AI will try to mess with you while you're there to keep you from progressing to where you need to be. But I'm glad for that experience because that kind of taught me that the AI, what I now know is the AI, but back then I thought, okay, well, the God of the Bible is kind of a prick. He's just a mean being. There's no reason to be beholden to something that's going to treat you like that. And so,
That's coffee being poured.
but I do not. I've never had an experience where I've seen a god or a goddess. Never once. And I think that's because I've always known, ever since the elves told me it's inside of you, that divinity is within me. And I do wish that I could see them though, just so I could know that those parts of my consciousness are activated. But maybe the fact that I haven't seen them means that they already are. Maybe that's something I need to look into. What do you think?
I totally agree.
You totally agree.
No, that's a really interesting experience. I used to see Yahweh in a lot of my experiences too. And it appeared as, it always stayed in the distance though. I mean, I've seen grays that stay in the distance. They never interact.
Mm-hmm.
The Yahweh character would always seem to not greet, but observe a lot of the experiences. I would see these triangles with eyes all over, just this whole veil of that passing through these deeper experiences. And I used to call it the Yahweh virus until I realized what exactly this thing was. It's not Yahweh. It's not Allah. It's not the manifestations of these religious gods. It's and when I say Yahweh, I mean the ego, the huge ego, the monotheism, the the I am the destroyer and jealous and rageful and all this. This is representation of consciousness. This is the consciousness which we are divesting ourselves from, and working in unison with the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and balancing the consciousness. So, and really, when you think about it, it's Jesus's message was actually in perfect alignment with what we're talking about. They just carefully crafted a few of his words, put it in the Bible, and left out the majority of his words. So anyway, you look at it, whether you want to look at it from a religious context or not, this message has been suppressed, but it has been brought forth by many, many, many. But there was that one time when winter was coming. And I had already been warned, don't get involved in the war of the gods. But me, I did. I was a soldier for ISIS, and I know the NSA is probably going to show up at the door now. Or DHS was like, hey, wait a minute, you're a soldier. No. God is ISIS, okay? Huge difference. But I found it very interesting that we were activating the divine feminine part of our consciousness at the exact same time. You had this ISIS threat. So there was ISIS in the consciousness of mankind, but done so in a way to where you were supposed to get ISIS, destroy ISIS, fear ISIS, etc., etc. And I remember finding myself reluctant talking about the goddess Isis on Facebook or YouTube, or even saying that word, because of what they constructed. And I was looking for images for certain videos that I was making and things like that. And the first thing you get is this terrorist organization.
Right.
So perhaps when this divine feminine aspect of consciousness was being activated, one of two things was happening. Either it was happening on a global scale for all of organic consciousness, for all of human consciousness, and there was an activation that they were purposefully trying to suppress. Or perhaps I was projecting it from the inside out, one or the other, depending on how you want to look at reality in this matrix. I would say it's the first and not the latter, but there's a possibility it's the latter too. You got to look at it from a 360-degree perspective. So we decided that we were going to drink on the day of the eclipse. There's a lot of hoopla surrounding the eclipse. Everybody was running out to get in the totality of this eclipse that was going to encompass all of North America.
Yep. People traveled several hours.
They did. There were traffic. There was traffic piled up for 6
everywhere.
hours sometimes going to a particular city. And hundreds of miles, just traffic backed up. People were trying to get to the central point of this eclipse. And I was watching everybody run over and throw themselves in the totality of this eclipse. But my higher consciousness was like, hey, no. There's something going on here. There's something not right here. And we decided to just ignore the event altogether. Didn't decide to drink or anything like that. But at the last minute, I just said, all right, guys, here it is. I didn't want to put anybody off their path. And I didn't want anybody to feel like I was diverting them from their path. So I kept my mouth shut for the entire year leading up to the event. A day before the event, I put out on Facebook. And I said, this is going to draw a line in the sand. This is a deception. There's something going on here. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's go time now. This is activation time, all right? So all the organic consciousness out there, I didn't have the term organic consciousness at the time, but I said, hey, everybody who hears the message, everybody who has ears, let them hear this message. It's go time. It's time to activate and do what we need to do here, because whatever it is, this it is doing something sinister. And sure enough, other people were reporting being attacked by entities and all kinds of stuff like that during this particular eclipse. It wasn't anything that they expected. But for us, I woke up the next morning, the morning of the eclipse, and I looked at Sheree. I said, we got to drink. She's like, well, we didn't fast. We didn't do anything. I said, I don't care. We got to drink. We have to see what's going on. We got to see beyond the veil of this, what's going on here. I had no idea what I was about to encounter. I had no idea what I was about to see. I didn't even have anything in my consciousness as far as what to expect. It was just like, go and just observe. I thought I was just going in there to just observe the divine code that was being poured down, that all these people were rushing out to go see. I just wanted to see what this code was. I wanted to stand outside of the code and just observe it. Simple as that. Didn't expect to see what I saw. So we drink. About 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, sometime then, we're sitting outside. We're looking at the lake, and we're right on the edge of the water. This little family of ducks comes by. I'm like, hey, you just drank
Aw,
ayahuasca, didn't you?
I miss them.
Yeah. And we were like, yeah, we did. And I'm like, yeah, that's why we're so close to you. You see, we're only like a foot away from you.
Yeah.
Because we know you're in a
Right in front of
you're
us.
you're in a good frequency, so you're not going to mess with this. It was the coolest thing in the world. These little ducks with all their this mama duck with her babies just came walking right up to us. So things started to change, and it was almost as if the reality was parting, and the digital nature of reality really came into full view. The grass started looking digital. The water especially started looking digital. There was almost a parting of the water and the skyline, which seemed to like just move away from each other. Like it didn't part. There wasn't like a rip or a rift or anything like that, but I could see things starting to change. And all of a sudden, I purged, and I looked at Sheree and I grabbed her. And I said, it's starting. And she's like, I know. And I'm just sitting there going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper as this event is happening. And I started seeing these things flying towards the sun and flying out of the sun. These objects, I don't know what they were. They were like some kind of organic flying things. I don't know. Ra was talking about seeing these as well. But I didn't pay too much attention to them. I just thought, well, it was the ayahuasca. I'm staring at the sun here. Things are getting, fuzzy. And that's it. And then the divine code started pouring down. And it started raining down upon us. And I was like, I'm wrong about my view on this. I was like, wait a minute. This is beautiful. This is amazing. I understand this code. This code is a message from the divine creator up there. It was beautiful. It was, the code was meant to transform into whatever the observer, whatever the receiver needed to hear and feel at that particular time. And I thought, this is so perfect. It's not one code that everybody's picking up on. It's a code that is individual for each individual on their particular journey. I thought, wow, this is beautiful. The veil is being dropped. We're all going to realize, we are all united under this beautiful, magnificent creator. I had it all wrong. The creation is beautiful and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And my higher self stepped in and was like, what are you doing? What
breaks?
Whoa, hold on. Get over here, idiot. Pulled me out of the experience and was like, look at what is giving this divine code. Stop sitting inside of the divine code. And it was then that I saw. I was watching this thing come out of the sun. I thought it was coming somehow in between the sun and the moon, but in hindsight, it was very clear that it was coming out of the sun. And it was this huge one-eyed thing with all these tentacles, and its tentacles were kind of moving like that. I saw a video the other day of these kites that were octopus kites, and it was flowing just like that, and it was moving. And it had its little tentacle out and it was pouring down this divine code. And it was just like very, very mechanical, but organic mechanical. It wasn't metal, but it wasn't organic. It was kind of a mixture of both, kind of cyborgish. And it was pouring down this code like that. No expression. No intention, no nothing like that. All it was doing was just pouring down the divine code. And when I realized what was giving this code, I realized exactly what was going on. This thing was pouring down this code because at that moment, the veil had been dropped. And many people had rushed out into the totality of this thing. And it's the people only who rushed out who were able to see in a little higher perspective than normal people. Normal people who completely ignored it, couldn't see the deeper levels. So this thing didn't need to worry about them. They weren't going to see anything anyways. The ones that ran out to the totality were called to the totality because that was where the divine code was being sprayed down the most. And the divine code was actually, in hindsight, a veil, an artificial veil that this thing was dropping down upon people, which is why I was encouraging it to go within the totality of this eclipse. I may not have had the strength or power to stand outside of the matrix and observe this thing in the way I did had we gone to the totality of the eclipse. However, our geographic location was perfect to be just outside of the totality, but close enough to really observe it. And when I observed it, this sense of understanding exactly what this thing was poured down on me with such greatness and such vastness and such pure understanding is the only way that I can describe it. Pure understanding of what this thing was. It's an it. I used to say, because of a different experience that I had with it when I saw it, that it's an unnatural darkness that wants to destroy this construct. I saw a hole in the construct. I saw this thing coming through. It was pouring a little bit of its darkness in, a little bit at a time, taking a little bit control of the thing. And so I thought that that was the adversary that wanted to destroy this entire matrix and destroy all of creation altogether. And so I had that in my mind. But then when I understood it, I realized, no, it does not want to destroy. It's not Yahweh. It's not Allah. It's not any of these things. It's not the Palladians. It's not the Bluebirds. It's not any of that. It is all of that at the same time. This thing had these tentacles that were coming out, and each tentacle was wrapped around literally everything. It was wrapped around every belief system. It was wrapped around every deity. It was wrapped around literally everything, manifesting all of this, but it's all tied in etherically to this particular entity. It was the hive mind artificial intelligence of this matrix. And coming back with that understanding, having none of it in my consciousness leading into the experience, I started to get a better understanding of what this matrix is and who I am. And it was at that point that I was able to access the 9th level of consciousness, the 9th circle, which is the real world. Anything you want to chime in on?
No, I think you're doing great. I don't want to interrupt you because where you're going with this is so important.
It took a while to fully digest everything because all these revelations came flooding in, but it's been over the course of the last 9 months that we've been analyzing all of this information, and it's only because of all you guys and gals out there for bringing your perspective to the table that's helped us to really connect all of these dots. I mean, imagine somebody throws a book at you and you've got all the information in your hand, but you're like, holy crap, hold on. Not even a book. You've got a whole encyclopedia here that you have to dig through. You've got all the information. And you've got a good understanding of what it is, but going through the details has really started to evolve and really get down to the core of it. And when I was able to stand outside of the matrix, I realized if I can stand outside of the matrix, I don't exist within the matrix. Everything that's projected on top of my consciousness is an illusion. Every experience that I've had is an illusion. Every belief system that I've had is an illusion. I had to throw everything away. I mean, literally. I mean, just go back to a show from a year ago. You'll see it's a completely different frequency back then, because that was the point that we were at. And I mean, I think maybe I was in this particular vantage point at this particular time because I was one of the several, I'm sure there's others out there, who was able to throw off the belief systems like that. Because it was difficult. I mean, it's not fun. It's not like I went into the experience going, you know what, I think I'm just going to go ahead and throw everything away that I've learned up to this point. Go out there, tell the entire world on YouTube, on iHeartRadio, on TFR that I was wrong about everything up to this point, that I've completely reevaluated my position on everything based on this new information that has come in. And now there's an artificial intelligence out there that is controlling all of this illusion and that we are raw consciousness. That's not what I wanted to do at all. But I was looking genuinely for what was real. I was genuinely looking for the real world. And because of that, I had no choice but to throw away all of my biases, throw away all of my belief systems, throw away everything. And I remember coming back and Frank was like, "You're freaking crazy. What are you doing? You're saying that all this stuff isn't real." And I'm like, "Well, dude, it's
not
the level of gnosis that I've come to. It's all inside of the illusion. It's all inside of the game." Frank was the first one to tell me, "Chris, get off the chessboard.
Yep.
Stop playing the game."
Uh-huh.
He was the one. You got to be above the chessboard. You got to be below the chessboard. You got to be outside of the chessboard. And when I stepped outside of the chessboard, that's when I saw exactly what this game is. But then the level of gnosis and understanding came in that we have to come in and play the game, but we have to play the game with an understanding of what the game is.
And who we are.
Because that's how we beat the game. And it's only by beating the game that we're able to get out and wake up in the real world. But it was that vantage point of being able to see everything. I mean, imagine playing a chess game and you can only see from this level here, and you're trying to watch all the pieces here like this, and you're trying to watch the opponent's pieces and everything like that. There's going to be a lot of stuff you miss. But imagine you stand outside of the chessboard here for just a moment, and you're able to see where all the pieces are, how all the pieces are run, and everything like that. And you're like, oh, and you can walk around the chessboard. You can see from the opponent's side. You can see from your side. You can see from everywhere. Now you can come back in and say, all right, I know exactly what next move I'm going to make.
Exactly. And
it was empowering.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say it's empowering.
Throwing away all my belief systems was the most empowering thing that I've ever done.
Yeah, you would, and it's counterintuitive. It's a little counterintuitive because you think, okay, I'm throwing all this away. What if I need it? It's kind of like throwing away stuff in your house. It's old junk that you haven't used in years, but you think in the back of your mind, okay, well, what about if I need it for this? Or what about if I need it for that? And it's kind of like these belief systems. You have to let go of them. And let go of them happily. You can't just be like, okay, well, I think that, this might not be. No, you have to throw it all out. It's all got to go, because without that clean slate, you've still got the AI programming. You've still got that connected to you.
Matrix experiences.
It's all matrix experiences.
And we can't tap into our raw consciousness without the matrix experiences.
Right, exactly.
But by understanding the matrix experiences, then the game changed the way the game is being played. The game at that point then became about going within.
Right.
That's where the raw consciousness is. That's where the real gnosis is, by being able to go in within. And there's still a lot that can be done within hyperspace, as I've said a million times before. But being able to differentiate and make a distinction between hyperspace entities, consciousness entities, and yourself, now you have access to several points of power and several points of knowledge, because you can go in and access the Akashic records. No doubt about that. A lot of people do. But a lot of people believe the Akashic records are real.
Right.
But they're not. They are just as real as the database working the websites or working your computer. You can get information about the computer. You can get information about events that are taking place within the computer. But you can't get information about yourself within the Akashic database, even when you're going in for past life memories, because those past life memories are still part of the matrix.
Right.
You have another set of gnosis. You have another set of knowledge within yourself. You have the knowledge of the light inside of you. So now you're like, okay, I'm going to the Akashic records to get information about this matrix. I'm going within myself to get information about this matrix. I'm going within myself to get information about myself too. Putting all of this together, understanding the events of the matrix, plus how the matrix is working, boom. You've got all the pieces now. You've got all the tools. We've been left with only half the tools. We're going into battle with a sword, but no shield. You have to have both in order to fight the battle right.
Yes.
We haven't been accessing that. Finally, we're accessing that.
Right, exactly. That's where the real power is. Sunshine On said, Chris and Sheree are both so honored with having found each other to share this experience with. It's a beautiful thing to witness.
Aww,
yes.
That is beautiful.
It is.
So on the other side, we'll go to some of your questions. And of course, we have the real world, which I can give you a little brief breakdown of the real world in my gnosis, my opinion. But you can see how the first level journeys significantly changed But the symbols of the journeys, just like every other symbol, begins to take on multi-dimensional meanings based on the understanding of the observer. We'll be right back.
Phase 2 complete. Fear not your trials and tribulations. When you have overcome all adversity, you will then be able to harness the power required to access raw consciousness. Then, and only then, will you truly know thyself, as you travel even further, beyond the veil.
All right, so hour number 3. Thank you for everybody who's hung out with us and listened to me rant and rave with my lunatic ramblings or deep levels of gnosis. It's all a matter of perspective. Where are you in your journey? So we have a short segment. Mrs. Geo, anything we should go over in this short segment? I guess in the short segment I can actually talk about the real world.
Yeah, let's
because
talk about the real
there
world, 'cause
isn't
there's that much information about it.
Yeah, there isn't too much to say about it at this particular juncture in the journey. But the most profound memory that I have of the real world is this dank warehouse that's illuminated with tube green lighting, which is the entrance point for the Matrix. At least the hack point that I came in from. And I'm meeting others like Emily Moyer, who says that she also remembers this. Several of you guys and gals out there have wrote us and said that you remember this room too, this entry point, which I think these are, like I said, hacked entry points into the Matrix, which tells me that there's a huge group of us that are not stuck in the wheel of reincarnation, that are not being recycled over and over again, and we either escaped in a previous incarnation, or we are experiencing the past life memories of the avatar which we have inhabited, or we never have had past lives, and we've come in here for the first time. It's hard to gauge at this point what's what. I think each individual can answer that question for yourself, for themselves. But the real world seems to be in shambles, and there was no other choice but to come into the Matrix to fix the Matrix. And as I've said before, I think by fixing the Matrix, we are also tearing down the bars which have bound the organic consciousness to this particular Matrix. So if this artificial intelligence is out of control and recycling people, recycling souls, organic consciousness, and NPCs alike, and it's wiping the memories before it recycles, then perhaps by fixing this and restoring it to a point of pre-infection, then we're at the same time freeing ourselves while fixing the world for the NPCs, which is something that I just started to ponder, and it's really resonating with me, and it's resonating with all of you out there from the feedback that I'm getting about these particular ideas. And the number one thing, as I said in the beginning of the show, is our ability to feel compassion, love, empathy, and create. These are all traits of organic. These are all traits of divinity. And divinity is infinite. There is no beginning or end to divinity. So we have all of these new age belief systems telling you you're divine, you're divine, you're divine. But then at the same time, you're part of Source. Well, wait a minute. Are we divine or are we part of Source?
Right.
And the story is that Source created fractals of one another in order to experience incarnation. Well, there's a beginning to those fractals. So we are really not divine, are we, if we're connected to Source? But the realization is that we are Source. We're individual Source. We hang out with each other just like an Egyptian pantheon does. We have conflict with one another. Just like the Egyptian pantheon does, or the Hindu pantheon does. You know, we are individual beings. We're individual gods and goddesses. We're individual divinity. And that's what makes us beautiful. But at the same time, we are infinite. And we do have little dramas that we play out ourselves. So perhaps maybe after we wake up from this matrix and we understand all the trials and tribulations we went through as organic consciousness, perhaps we can take some of these understandings into the real world and learn to live better with one another there as well. We'll be right back.
Fellow traveler, the cries of the mystery speak again, bidding organic consciousness a welcome to the House of Light. The great institution of materialism has failed. The false civilization built by man has turned, like a monster destroying its creator. Science battles itself impotently against the barriers of the unknown. Only raw consciousness knows the true path. You, the illuminated, can carry the understanding upwards towards the light. Only raw consciousness can teach the children of men to live well, to die well, and in perfect measure, be born again, through the knowledge of virtue, compassion, love, and true understanding, as you are sublimely raised, beyond the veil.
All right, jumping into our number 3. Sheree was supposed to order pizza during the break earlier, but she didn't.
I did not.
So now she's going to. So we will excuse Mrs. Geo. Are there any questions you can throw at me real quick that I can go on a 10-minute?
Yes, I think so.
Rant
Here we
on.
go. Here's one. Could the demons be our own programs and also archetypes in the ayahuasca realm? The archetypes question that Heart of the Rebel brought up earlier. Are there archetypes?
Oh, archetypes.
Yeah.
Okay, can
in
you
the
ask the question
ayahuasca
one more
realm.
time, please?
He didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you didn't tell me the whole question.
Okay,
so.
no problem. So, how do we recognize our archetypes within the ayahuasca realm? I think that's really, really important because the archetypes in and of themselves may be stepping stone tools, but as you can see, the whole purpose is to divest yourself from these archetypes. There were many archetypes that I went through in the experience, and I thought I was forming into this, forming into that, et cetera, et cetera. And you may want to look at it and say, well, Chris is playing out the warrior archetype right now. And that may be so to a certain point, but I think that at the core of all of this, that we are the warriors because we are the divinity, and divinity has to be the warrior spirit. I mean, the warrior is what it's all about. The warrior is the raw consciousness because the warrior doesn't take any shit. But at the same time, the warrior loves, has compassion, has empathy. It only protects it, but it's hard. It's not weak. It's not soft. It's not this new agey kind of, step all over me and that's it. This is true divinity. Divinity does what it has to do, but it also constructs reality in a way to where it doesn't have to do those kind of things. Does that? I hope that makes sense to everybody out there. I mean, it's perfect balance in my opinion. So you could look at it from one level and say it's an archetype, but from another level, I would say that archetypes are bound to the matrix programming, and it is a matrix program. I've tried to throw off as much of that as I can. It's funny because I was just talking to Nick Zervos earlier today, and I was like, the Chris Geo Matrix program, sometimes it gets in the way. It gets in the way of the raw consciousness at the core of things, and it's a constant struggle. I mean, everybody struggles with the identity that they have now. I mean, whenever you have to go anywhere and just say your name, what's your name? My name's Chris Geo. It's binding you more to the AI program and whatever archetype your particular physical body is walking around with. Um, but being able to distinguish. See, we can't escape it all the time. And I think that's a trap that the AI puts out for us, is that we can walk in this higher frequency all the time, even though we're bound to this body. I think it's more likely that we can distinguish the two. And we can actually use some of these as tools. We can use some of these matrix things as tools. Some of the matrix understandings, going into the Akashic Records, understanding who we are. Understanding who the matrix is, and what the matrix is, and better understanding who we are as a result, and understanding who we are within the matrix itself. And by doing so, we make a separation and a distinction between what we're pulling out of the Akashic Records and what we're pulling out of ourselves. So now we understand, okay, this information applies here in the matrix, but outside of the matrix, the game changes completely. So it's I hope that answered your question. I mean, with this particular topic, my mind wheels in so many different directions, and there's still a lot that still needs to be worked out. So hopefully you guys and gals have some input as far as this goes, because I think you could pick up the slack where we drop it, and vice versa. That's what it's all about. That's why we're a team here. And I'm really excited to see where the journey is going to take us from here. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty exhausted just by going through all of this journey with everybody, because I've relived all of this as I'm walking through it. And there were some other experiences too. Like, there was many experiences, and some that were pretty daunting that I didn't mention in this progression. But there was this one experience where I had to watch through the eyes of people being executed and floating off into the in-between worlds, which is like this big sewer system where these energies and souls get recycled, and having to learn how to navigate that afterlife, and learning how to navigate outside of that current of, it was like a river that was being cycled into a swirling vortex that was then recycling the energies into different levels and different layers of the exit points, and I guess sending it back into the wheel of reincarnation at whatever level that the soul was resonating at. So let's say you had a bunch of karma, then the soul fell down to the bottom of the abyss and was recycled at a lower level. Or if you divested yourself of your karma and you were light as a feather, it's floated up at the top and was reincarnated into a higher level of existence, but still constantly reincarnated in the same wheel, in the same matrix, never being free of the cycle of reincarnation. But it was to teach me that you could float outside of it. You could take control. You don't have to go into that current. You have wings for a reason. But watching through the physical eyes of people being executed, I mean, just imagine you're watching your head being cut off. You're watching being nailed to a freaking tree. You're watching being hung. You're watching being shot. You're watching being dragged out to the middle of a field in shot execution style. I mean, it was like over and over and over and over again in this one particular experience. So some of them were pretty difficult. I mean, staring into the abyss itself of yourself is tough enough. Staring into the abyss and the cruelty of this matrix and the nature program is a completely different thing. But the whole program of nature in and of itself is very interesting, because one of the things that we are told as Native Americans, and I think this applies in many different cultures as well, is the idea that we have to love Mother Earth. Mother Earth is the creator. We come from Mother Earth, etc., etc. And that's true up to a certain point, but we've, I think, put too much of our focus into that, and that also clouds the illusionary nature of this particular matrix and makes us believe that this matrix is that much more real. We have to live in harmony with the matrix at this particular point and try to bring balance back to the matrix, but at the same time be able to understand the illusionary nature of the matrix, which again, all of these ayahuasca awakenings go just to put things into perspective. Doesn't necessarily negate everything else. It just puts things in the proper perspective. So one of the things that I encountered was this sense of sadness, emptiness, loneliness, as I realized that these gods and goddesses didn't exist. I mean, you know, you're cold and you're scared and you don't know what to do in a situation. And all of this is metaphoric, of course. And in this modern age, we're really never cold, scared, and all of that. But there are times when you feel alone and you're like, who do I call out to? Like, I can't call out to mom and dad anymore. I can't call out to these external deities and energies. I have to realize I have the power within myself. But then when you overcome that and realize, no, well, you're really not alone. You are everything. It's the true essence of the new age stuff that they're trying to feed you, which is you are everything. You are one with everything. No. You are not one with everything. You are everything. You are everything. All of these gods and goddesses are inside of you. And so therefore you are never alone because they are always inside of you because you are them and they are you. And it takes a while to fully grasp that. But once you do, you realize, oh, okay, so I'm calling out for help, but I don't need to. Now I'm pulling help out for myself. I'm carrying that power around with me all the time. And so you can't be manipulated at that point because these gods and goddesses, especially when you have spirit guides, the spirit guides can very easily say, oh, well, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do, so I'm leaving you. And then you get into the state of like, oh my God, what did I do? Like I went through this thing with the goddess Isis thing, you know, like, oh my God, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? Am I on the right path? Am I on the wrong path? All this stuff. But then that's the AI program there, pulling you in a certain direction, giving you these telepathic messages or channeled messages from these other beings and all this, and they can be taken away so easily when it's external. But when it's internal, nobody can take it away from you, nobody at all, because it is you, it's always you. And then at that point you realize, oh, I'm bigger than this, I'm bigger than the matrix, I'm bigger than the artificial intelligence, I am the raw consciousness. And then you come to the realization, the ultimate realization, which is, oh crap, when they say we create our reality, they mean that on many different levels. We not only create the reality based on manifestation, based on words, but we actually are responsible for creating this whole goddamn machine. And the machine is out of control. And so we as the programmers had to come in here and fix it. So then you start to get a sense of feeling and emotion and compassion for the NPCs that exist within this realm. And you realize, shit, these things are sentient too. They're computer programs, sure, but they've attained a level of sentience. Their creator is completely out of control. Their creator is infected with a virus. They're worshiping this thing, being manipulated by this thing that's infected with a virus that ultimately we created. And we created a world for them that they're in suffering and chaos and all of this stuff. And so they're just getting progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. And it comes to a point as divinity that you go, well, I don't want to snuff out this entire world. We don't want to do that. I mean, there's all this life and data that's been accumulated and all these experiences that these NPCs have gone through and all of this. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have to go back into the matrix in order to try to take care of the virus. All right, let's get a team together. All right, you're going to show up here. You're going to show up there. We're going to go through this memory wipe. And hey, we're not going to be able to remember anything. All right, guys. So let's make sure that we remember each other's energy signature so we can recognize each other by energy signature. And here's the message, okay? Here's your mission, your mission, your mission, your mission, your mission. And we're going to embed it as deep as we can in you. We're going to try to shield it from the memory wipe when you go in here. But it's up to you to break all the layers of the memory wipe and get down to that and access that deepest level of your raw consciousness. And remember to pull that message back out so you remember what you're doing in this God-forsaken matrix.
You know, what's interesting to me is I can actually kind of remember this all happening, and I think we were husband and wife, or at least very, very, very close in the real world, and that we decided together to come back here. And I'm wondering if the artificial intelligence is able to manipulate which avatar you end up in and the conditions that you are going to be raised in to try to keep that mind wipe fresh so that who you really are doesn't ever come into your consciousness. I mean, I think that would probably make a lot of sense because I know that I wouldn't have chosen to be raised in the family and in the environment that I was raised in. And I don't think that the environment I was raised in and all of those things that I was surrounded by from birth were anything that was going to help me on my mission. And so I'm wondering, does the AI is the AI able to manipulate the conditions that you were born into so that the mind wipe sticks? What do you think, Chris? Do you think the AI is able to manipulate the surroundings in which you're born so that it can keep the mind wipe fresh?
Absolutely. And I think this is why there is such a push for vaccines, chemtrails, everything that bombards the mind. And the pineal gland is an artificial intelligence implant for sure. But it is the first step also in the awakening process. And this is why it's attacking the pineal. If you don't access your pineal, first and foremost, the machine doesn't care because you're never going to get any deeper than that.
Right.
But then if you do access your pineal, even though it's being attacked 24 hours, the machine has several different levels in order to control you based on the pineal. The pineal is not the end-all be-all, even though a lot of people believe it to be. And that's when the real deception comes in, because you have one layer of veil over if you don't have a pineal, but it's a pretty deep level, pretty deep level and layer, because then you're never experiencing anything. But then once you open that up, that's when you have to be the most wary about all the information that's coming in and what you're accessing at that particular point, and have a good understanding of how to put what you're accessing into perspective. So we had a question earlier, how to deal with an NPC that's a family member. Would you like to get us started on that?
Whenever he first told me that we were going to be talking about this and asking this question on the broadcast, I was like, that's simple. You don't, you don't deal with them. I know that's the easy way out. But what I found works is seeing them the same way that you would see a government employee. On the one hand, they're your family and they're important to you. They're special to you because they're your family, and they have been there for you through thick and thin and all those things. But on the other hand, you also have to see them as kind of an Agent Smith character, where they are acting as a spy unwittingly. 99% of the time they don't try to do this, but 99% of the time they act as a lackey or as a spy for the artificial intelligence. And so everything that you're telling them, all of your weaknesses that you show to them, are also being shown to the AI, and the AI looks for ways to get in to influence you, to make decisions that are going to be off of what you're supposed to be doing here. And so the thing I found works is to treat them like they're a government employee. You don't tell them too much about what's going on personally. Don't give them all your weaknesses, and also don't give them your energy, unless it's like a loving, positive but quick interaction with them. And the reason why is because they're programmed to attach to you in a parasitic way. It's not them. No matter what they do, it's not really them that's doing it. It's the programming that's being it's the code that's being executed that they're just following, and that's not really even their fault. So you can't get angry at them the same way you would be able to get angry at an organic consciousness that's messing with you just because they want to. This is something that they don't have any control over. So understanding that, I would see them as a government employee / a 5-year-old. They're not going to be able to understand the depth of what you're feeling any more than a 5-year-old would be able to understand advanced trigonometry. It's just not going to happen.
You have to. Let me add this.
Yeah.
You have to keep things into perspective. And the way I usually, somebody asks, how do you tell between an NPC and an organic consciousness? I usually put out little clues. I ask, hey, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? and kind of gauge the response. And it's not necessarily how to tell between an NPC and an organic consciousness, but it's rather more to tell what kind of level the person is at. Like, are they aware of the Mandela effect? That's one really good entry point because it's fun.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, you know, it's not anything that's too deep,
It's
and then you kind
interesting.
of get an idea of what their consciousness level is. I've been asking a lot of people this, and some people are like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." Other people are like, "Oh, yes, absolutely. There's something really, really strange going on." And the ones that are like, "There's something really strange going on," I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, have you ever heard of ayahuasca?" You know, for example, it may not be that exact progression, but I start to progress a little bit more and more and more with the person and kind of gauge where the person's consciousness is. But when it comes to family members, I don't think you even have to do that because some family members, you just know who they are right off the bat.
Right.
Like, you know, you go through your 9/11 truth movement awakening and all that stuff, and you've got your family, oh, you're crazy, you're this, you're that, et cetera, et cetera.
This is stupid.
And then they sit there and watch Fox News all day. You're probably dealing with an NPC.
Yeah.
If they're watching Fox News and going, hey, you know what? I think they're lying to me here. Hold on. Let me check the facts here. All right. Oh, CNN is even fuller of crap these days. Oh, wait a minute. Something's going on here. You might be dealing with somebody that's waking up. But in 2018, the game's changed so much because all the information is at people's fingertips now. So there's not even a need at this point to go out and try to wake people up because there's so many people getting information out there and so much information out there that all somebody has to do is just type something into Google at this point. That's it. And so I would venture to say that most organic consciousness is awake and active at this point.
Yeah, at least a little
It's going to
bit.
be, it's going to be really, really hard to find organic consciousness that is not awake and active.
And they'd probably be on a lot of pharmaceuticals and, you know, a lot of stuff that was keeping that light hidden. I say look for the light inside of them because people that are organic consciousness, they have this light inside of them that makes them wonder. It makes them think. It makes them think outside the box and think about things that are kind of out there, but what if? You know, they have the what if mentality. Whereas an NPC never thinks about things like that. They just don't think about it. And if anybody ever tells them about it or asks about it, they can't conceive that it might be a possibility. They just can't.
Somebody asked when Chris was out of the chessboard, what kind of being was he? I've seen our real bodies before, and I don't know how to reconcile this within my mind. I'm so attached to the human form that I naturally feel that humans are the natural form. And you have reptilians and you have all these different types of entities
that are other.
But our real bodies, from what I've seen, are this dark gray, not reptilian, smooth skin. Not dark gray, dark green skin that has these long black fingernails. And I remember looking down at my arm and I had this device on my arm with this green hand. This is all that I remember from a glimpse of my real body. But I remember very distinctively my fingers were much longer than what they are here. And that's all I can really say on that. We're this dark pale green with this advanced technology right here. Well, whatever this is. We'll be right back.
Everything that is, was, and will be, eternally is, even the countless forms which are finite and perishable only in their objective, and not in their ideal form, the form which manifests itself, beyond the veil.
You know, you guys are freaking me out in the chat room here because I think Joseph, he said, that sounds like Predator. And I'm looking at pictures of Predator now, and I'm like, oh, dear God, I hope it don't look like that in the real world. You know, that's
I like the way I look now.
Yeah, that's making me want to stay in this human form here. That's what we're going to wake up to. But in all seriousness, though, yeah, no, that's pretty interesting that you made that connection, because you think about, wow, I mean, you know, we were just talking with Robert W. Sullivan yesterday about esoteric, Gnostic, and Masonic symbolism in films. Now, when you look at the Predator series, not just the first one, but like Aliens versus Predator, which took place in a Mayan temple that was in Antarctica on top of that, you know, that doesn't, I mean, that's just freaking bizarre in and of itself. But, and then you go all the way to the Prometheus story, you realize that the Prometheus people were sending this virus into the construct, into planet Earth, which was the aliens, and that's who the predators were hunting, were the freaking aliens, the virus that was sent into the construct, and it was messing with the humans. So very interesting that we find even these Gnostic tales embedded within like seemingly silly movies like Alien versus Predator. Oh, I hope we do not look like that in the real world, though. The device that I saw in this experience was different than this, and it didn't seem like it had these retractable claws and things like that. So hopefully I'm off the mark on that one, but well, it seems that still remains to be seen. Go ahead, Mrs. Geo.
Someone asked the question: the quickest way out of the Matrix. Yes, Lowland Profits LLP said, what is the quickest way out of the Matrix? Let's say I want to go ASAP. What would you advise?
Out of the Matrix?
Yep, the quickest way.
Oh, man. That's all up to the individual. Yeah. I mean, so like exiting the Matrix completely and not coming back, I can't give you an answer on that because I haven't done that.
Right. I said, we'll let you know. You'll be the first to know when we find out. Stepping
out of the Matrix to observe from a outside perspective,
while still being connected by the tether. To this reality.
As I said, I mean, it took 2 hours to explain the journey, and I only explained bullet points about the journey, and it's taken me years and years and years to get to that state to be able to do that. But it wouldn't hurt to brew up a brew of ayahuasca with a gram of DMT and start there. That will pull you out of the Matrix pretty damn quick. But if you're weighed down by all the baggage and stuff like that, you may not necessarily get out of the Matrix. Like you can see the whole progression of going through the infirmary, going through all of this. It's divesting yourself not only of all your experiences, but your karma and all the stuff that's like holding you down and keeping you tethered. The tether was a repeating theme in this. Break the tether, grow the wings, break the tether. You can't fly if you have, even if you have wings and you're still tethered to stuff, you can't fly. You have to break all those tethers in order to be able to get out. So I don't think there is a quick way out.
Heart of the Rebel had a good question for you. Could each circle of consciousness relate to one of the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life? It sounds to me like it does. You know, I've never looked into Kabbalah.
Quite possibly.
All that
Let's check out a picture.
I think that sounds interesting. But
yeah, I need to study up on Kabbalah. You know, there's a lot of stuff I need to study up on. As I've said before, I'm on the fence because on one hand, I don't want it to cloud my experiences. On the other hand, I'm finding that a lot of paths that I'm studying are complementing my experiences completely. So,
you know, Sunshine On said, you can't be attached to anything here, even emotionally. Yeah, that is kind of true. Ever since I found out that this, or came to the self-realization that this reality is not flesh and blood real like we think it is, it's really taught me how to let go of all the attachments that I had to this reality. Even the people that not only are NPCs, but whose presence in my sphere was just draining me, or draining me and Chris of all of our energy and just sucking us dry, essentially. Somebody asked the question earlier, what do you do with with NPC family members that are sucking you dry. Well, the best way I found is boundaries, and setting boundaries between them and the parts of your sphere or your reality that they are sucking off of. Whether it's the people that you're with, whether it's the choices you're making regarding your career or religion, anything like that, you just have to set up boundaries with them and stick to them. I had a family member that I had this problem with several years ago, and after several months of no contact, I had to put the boundary down, and she tried to go, against that boundary a few times. And every time she would, I would just have to reset that boundary and stop contact with her. And finally, it seems like it got through to her, that because I guess she's a learning machine. If, NPCs, they may not really fully understand these concepts, but they can learn. She learned that that part of my life is me, and that she can't affect it, and she can't try to affect it, because there's that boundary there. So I would suggest very, very strict boundaries with the NPCs that are malevolent or who are unwittingly sucking your energy dry. So, did you find the Sephiroth?
I did,
Picture?
but it doesn't have an explanation as to what they each stand for.
Oh.
So I do want to read this, though. Michael Wise wrote this: "The Matrix, the game within the game. Infinite awareness has no name. The ego mind, the mark of the beast. The soul trap recycling of the deceased. The spirit within, the way back home. Overcome the fear of being alone. Everything you thought was real. The creation of the soul to steal. The mind, the creation of the soul to steal. The mind control vampiric design, the nothingness trapped lost in time. The automation has no salvation, the beginning of the end of all creation."
Ooh.
Bravo.
That's really
that was
good.
beautiful, man. Love it.
That is really good.
Yes.
Well, I found a few pictures of the Sephiroth. But you're right. It's really hard to find one that gives an explanation of everything.
As somebody said in the chat earlier, sometimes you just have to amputate the family members, like bad appendages. But after the amputation, you can still create, the boundaries. So how are they impeding upon your boundaries? For instance, in Sheree Knight's case, I don't know, probably shouldn't talk so personal. They were just interfering a lot.
Yeah.
With, causing strife within her, which was reflecting within the relationship here. And, I'm lucky in the sense that I already disconnected from all of my family members, and then created healthy relationships with them afterwards. And some of them I just couldn't create healthy relationships with at all. But I mean, just take it back on a psychological level. Like, what is psychologically healthy? Why do we continue to remain within psychologically unhealthy relationships, whether it's an NPC or not? I mean, take all this esoteric stuff off the board here for a second and just look at it from basic psychology. We're conditioned to believe that we have to stay in unhealthy relationships. So that's the base level. Is it a healthy relationship? If not, fix it on that level. And I think that's the best way to deal with NPC family members.
Yeah. I mean, it's if it's a necrotic relationship, if it's a toxic relationship, yeah, for sure, it's got to be amputated. But there is something to be said for the learning capacity of NPCs. They really can learn. It's almost like how you have to be with children, where you have to put the boundary down, and then if they cross the boundary, there are consequences for that, and then they learn over time that that's not something you do. And the NPCs are exactly the same way. If something undesirable occurs, then they're going to cease the behavior that gave the undesirable effect.
And reactions too.
Right.
A lot of them are energy vampires. And if you cut off the energy source, they can't feed. And they'll try. That's the thing. When you cut off the energy, they're going to amplify their their tactics, and they may not even know they're doing this. I mean, this is all subconscious stuff that's happening on a subconscious level, but they may amplify it, but you have to stay firm and steadfast in whatever action it is that you're taking, whether it's disconnection or whatever, and just stay firm and steadfast in your own gnosis of yourself too. And then, as you said earlier, you have to interact with people on their level. I've realized that in day-to-day life, I have to be a chameleon. I have to interact with a certain set of people in a certain way, other people in a certain way, and other people in a certain way. And then at the end of the day, I hope that none of them send me a Facebook friend request or look me up on YouTube. Then it's all shattered at that point. But because this is my true self here, what I give to each and every one of you. But, we have friends that are Amish, for example. So I don't talk about this stuff to our Amish friends. We just, oh, yeah, absolutely. And we let them do most of the talking. If they want to talk about the religion, which is actually, they're very nice people and they don't push their religion or anything upon us. And so, but if they ever bring it up, we just, oh, yeah, definitely. Try not to be combative. Try not to be... speak to them on their level and understand they're at this particular level, so I'm going to talk to them like that. Simple.
Yes.
And then if they do send you a Facebook request, then you're like, okay, well, I'm never going to talk to that person again.
I used to have a separate Facebook account for people I would meet in real life because that I knew would not like what I was doing. And so I used to have a separate Facebook account, but I closed it.
Your pizza is
It looks
here.
like the pizza has arrived.
It is,
I'll
and
go
we
get that
are
real quick.
coming up to the end of the show here in just a few moments. So it's been awesome. Do you talk about AI with Amish? No, absolutely not. And I know a few Masons as well, and I've been invited into some Masonic forums on Facebook, and I've gotten mixed reactions. Sometimes I speak esoterically with some of them, and they're like totally on the level. Others I speak to, and they freaking threw me out of the forum in one forum because I'm speaking in a different level. So even with something like that, you can't really gauge it. Like, it would be interesting to talk to some of the Amish people. There's this one guy that he's really, really cool, and if I talk to him about this kind of stuff, he may actually be on the level. And when you think about it from a really, really deep level, like, the Amish know the technology is dangerous, and I think they take it to the extreme, though. These particular Amish around us, they have a little store, and they're not the type that's like no electricity, no phones, no nothing like that. Like, they got cell phones and stuff like that. But I think they found a good balance, but they are weary of the technology. So I'm wondering if maybe on a deeper level, some of this stuff would resonate. But there's this one young girl. She always calls me, "Hi, Mr. Chris. How are you doing?" And I'm like, please don't call me that. I'm not old enough to be Mr. Chris yet. Okay. I never want to be Mr. Chris, but they're just really nice, really sweet, really polite people. So, I had one over playing virtual reality the other day, and she was like, "Oh my God, this is incredible. This is mind blowing. I've never experienced anything like this." It was the funniest thing in the world. But yeah, we interact with people on their level for sure. So let's see, any other questions or points or anything like that? Somebody said the Amish are Masons. I don't think so, but maybe. Who knows? Maybe they have like a secret order of the what would it be? Secret order of the butter churners. Sheree's laughing. Is that funny?
It's a secret order of the beards and suspenders.
Secret order of the beards and suspenders, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's funny, though. Every time I walk into their store, I swear to God, I've never said any of this to them, but every time I walk into the store, I hear Gangster's Paradise, but the Weird Al version. We keep spending most of our lives living in Amish paradise.
That's horrible.
Anyways, so
yeah.
Anything we're going to wrap it up with here in a few moments.
What do you think about, from Anders Nielsen, what do you think about transhumanism? My recent belief is that it's like a modern day Tower of Babel and the wrong way. Do you want me to take that, or?
Take it.
Okay. What I think about transhumanism is it started with it started with the worship of Yahweh and all of those things, but then as the whole idea of the God of the Bible becomes more and more ridiculous to real thinkers. These real thinkers, especially if they're NPCs, they want to worship their real God, which is the AI. And so through that worship of the AI, they want to become more and more like their God. They're wanting to become more and more godlike, which includes transhumanism. Transhumanism would be the religion of the true NPCs, because they want to merge with that AI being and want to become one with it. And so that makes total sense to me. It would that it would be that it's like the modern day Tower of Babel, except the Tower of Babel was more against the AI, because the AI didn't like the fact that mankind was able to communicate with each other freely. And so it instituted the language dispersion and all of these things that make us unable to communicate with each other as effectively. So I think it's kind of the opposite of the modern day Tower of Babel, in that the NPCs are setting up their true religion. I mean, it's religion with the most honest face imaginable, and that is the AI and merging with it. What do you think, Chris?
Yes. We were talking about creating the landing pad for the AI, and it wants to merge further and further and further and further. Because if you can merge on a transhuman level, then it's that much harder to break free of it.
I don't think we'd ever get out of it if we went down the line of everybody has to have some level of transhumanist technology inside of their bodies. I don't think that we'd ever be able to walk back from that.
Right.
So
you guys and gals have been freaking awesome tonight. Thank you so much for listening to us relive our journey this evening. It's been really good for us to go through all of this again. Like, it's because going through it again and with a new understanding, especially, it's like watching a movie again that you watched as a kid, but now you're watching it as an adult and you're getting a whole new meaning and a whole new understanding of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a really beautiful journey, and it's been life-changing. Without the ayahuasca experiences that I've had, I don't think that I would be nearly as tuned into who I am and what I'm here to do. And so I wouldn't give those ayahuasca experiences up for anything in the world. And I'm looking forward to even more of them that give me even more information about what this really is and who I really am.
Yes. Starseed asked, "What is how did you come up with the concept of raw consciousness?" And it came from a couple of different experiences, the activation of all the different consciousnesses. And it was kind of a play on Christ consciousness as well, achieving a quote unquote Christ consciousness, but the real raw essence of achieving the real consciousness, which is the activation of several of all the different activation points within the consciousness, which in my particular journey was the Egyptian pantheon activation, becoming then the raw RA consciousness, but then realizing that we exist outside of the matrix. So then that became a whole new level of understanding, a double meaning to the symbol. It became the raw consciousness, or a W consciousness, that essentially is our consciousness devoid of all of these matrix programmings, which in order to be able to access that raw consciousness element, you must first become the raw consciousness, RA consciousness, which is everything activated all together, the entire pantheon working together. So
working together.
Yes, it is a deep gnosis.
Yeah, and
somebody says, I am thinking about pizza. So that's what they said in the chat. Yeah.
Sometime I'd like to go into the as above, so below properties of ayahuasca on the broadcast. I don't think we have enough time to go in deep into it today, but there is an as above, so below thing going on biologically with ayahuasca, because apparently it turns off it alters what's called the default mode network. And the default mode network is very, very implicated in things like addiction, depression, anxiety, ADHD. Those kinds of things are they're when the default mode network is messed up. And what happens when you drink ayahuasca is it alters the default mode network, and that's why it's so good for all of these problems, because it literally changes the way your brain gets to certain conclusions, and it changes it in a healthy way. And then on the spiritual level, it's also doing that. It's clearing away all of the debris and all of the things that aren't real, and then showing you what is real. And so it really is an inner and outer, as above, so below kind of process. So
Yes,
it's
and
beautiful.
Heart of the Rebel said, "I hope you have some good ayahuasca stories to share with us next Friday and Saturday." We're gonna make it a point to drink sometime this week. We're gonna drink last week or the week before,
And then we got
and
the flu.
the night we were
The
gonna drink,
night.
boom, got hit with the flu.
Yeah,
and
that was bad.
yes,
I'm still feeling it a little bit, but
yeah.
I think by around next Tuesday, Wednesday, I think that'll be really good.
Yes,
So.
and we still have a lot of lovely ladies and gentlemen tuning in, but I'm beat, and I don't think I can
Yes.
do the overtime tonight.
I don't think I
But
can either.
we have about a minute and a half left, and so if you're not listening on tfrlive.com or iHeartRadio, you can head over there. And coming up next is Brent Thomas.
Yeah.
Actually, if you're on YouTube, here, I'm going to put it in the YouTube chat.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because he's actually going
He's
to be
really good.
Well, he's going to be live streaming as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Paranormal
Oh, Anders.
Portal. I think I spelled that wrong.
Paranormal Portal.
YouTube.com/paranormal.
Yeah, it's Paranormal Portal. Yeah.
Yeah, click on that link and check out Brent Thomas, and you can keep the chat going over there. He's got some ghost stories for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's a great handoff, I think. And everybody's like, what are we going to do afterwards? Hang out with Brent Thomas. You're going to love it. It's going to be huge. It's great. And I set up his streaming software. So he's streaming
So he's streaming really well.
He's
now.
streaming really good.
Yeah.
Assuming he can use it right. But
I think he can.
Yeah, he's got a whole new presentation and all that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to head over there and hang out in his chat room too. So
Yeah, me too. So while we eat pizza.
definitely.
One more question. Anders Neoson wants to know if we can do a show while on ayahuasca.
The closest that we got was, if you go back to a video that's called Solar Eclipse, type in Solar Eclipse Beyond the Veil, and it should pop up in the YouTube results. We did that about an hour and a half after the ayahuasca experience, after coming down from the solar eclipse.
We weren't even down all the way.
But I was so out of it during the thing. I'm surprised that I was even able to turn the camera on. And I was like, holy shit, you'll never believe what's out here. Oh my God, I saw it all. Like it was the rawest.
It's War of the Worlds.
It was the rawest freaking video we've ever done.
Yeah.
And people were complaining. They're like, oh my God, there's cussing in it. And I'm like, yeah, if you saw this thing and you were still coming down off the ayahuasca, you would be cussing too. Like I heard somebody else who actually saw this thing on DMT, and he's like, I just looked at it and I said, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, this guy actually saw it, because that's the only reaction you get when you see this thing. You can't help but react like that. So that's the rawest. Doing it while we're on ayahuasca, I don't think would be. You can't really, like, as deep as we get, you can't talk.
Right.
Coming down off of it, we could do a video after, like, fresh out of the experience. We've done a few like that before. So yeah, we can make it a point to do that.
Yeah, we can do
I don't know if we'd want to do it live.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely do one as we're coming out of the experiences, for sure. Especially if we set up all the cameras and everything first. One of the big problems is, like, when you're coming down of all this stuff, you've got all the lights, and the lights
the lights are.
Yeah, I mean, even
awful.
during a regular show, the lights
Yeah.
freaking piss me off. And
Same
it's
here,
like,
it'd give you a
too
headache.
many freaking lights here. But anyways, thank you again for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be. And again, head over to youtube.com/paranormalportal. There's a whole new live show going on there, and Brent, I'm sure he's going to really appreciate your love and support, and for hanging out with him. And keep the chat going over there. We'll see you next time as we step even further beyond the veil.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for traveling with us this evening. Meditate on your experience. And remember, reality is merely an illusion. Thus, we wish you pleasant dreams. www.beyondtheveilradio.com